welcome in. We are live. We finally made it to our Tuesday night live show. Welcome in. Of course, the return from the trip to the Bay. Again, of course, shout out to Sam and Naya for the incredible wedding. We're back in the home studio chat. We're almost, officially sort of caught back up from the trip as well, too. So, everything's running smooth. And, perfect, perfect timing to have sort of the trip catch-up episode also be the 5th anniversary of what is on the REMINGTOM pod, I think, a classic movie. Of course, we're Nolan guys. I should say we're just gonna fire this up in the background right as well too. I guess the movie tonight is Tenet that we're revisiting, and good to get maybe. No, it's not gonna be one last movie for the year, but we are of course heading now into the real thick of the sports calendar again. We got football right back in the mix with the NFL starting up this week. Of course, college football starting up last week. And make no mistake, chat, subscribe to the REMINGTOM pod. We're going to be live for a lot of it. Hey, we're going to be following along to the sports season. And then, of course, in a month or two here, the NBA is going to kick back up into it as well. But, just to sort of at least ISO clear out for one final movie, chat, for this year anyways, right before we get into the sports world, I think Tenet might be the one, and it may be one that we have to actually clear out for as well, too, because, again, it's going to take a second to understand what's going on. It is what it is, but right now it's available for us anyways on demand on the Sling TV app. So it's available on that through TNT, I guess, at the time of this recording. So if you're this live stream, if you're trying to follow along sometime soon, that's how we're watching it. Of course, rentable, buyable as well too, and all the different stuff. But right now we got it paused at 25 seconds on the Sling TV stream. It's got the Warner Brothers logo, about to do the little Warner Brothers logo intro as well too, and we will hit play and just get this thing fired up because make no mistake, again, with the commercial breaks, chat, it's going to be a trek, but we're going to be excited. And I haven't seen this one because of sort of the weird streaming life with this. I haven't seen this one in its entirety in a minute. Of course, I do go back to some of the YouTube scenes quite a bit, and it is a pretty good YouTube scene movie. Nolan obviously known for a strong intro to his movies. I don't know, is he the best intro scene director of all time? Because if you think about a lot of just the standout, the quality of the scenes of his movies as well too. Again, we're talking about the quality of scenes of movies within really great movies. So it's not like, oh, Nolan's just constructing these opening scene masterpieces and then the movie just tailspins, as a first quarter, but where's the fourth quarter performances from Christopher Nolan? But again, a lot of the really defining set pieces and unique things that he does lay a lot of that stuff out in the beginning as well. And I think that Tenet is a fun movie just in the Nolan landscape of the filmography as well too, because of the way that he gets to use these action set pieces. And obviously Nolan with the action stuff became, he was able to really focus on that a lot in the Dark Knight trilogy and use those Batman characters in a really special way and had a lot of really special stunts and set pieces and all different stuff. Just again, the Dark Knight movie alone with the truck flip and the parish, and not the parish, what do they call it, chat? Hey, we got to rewatch the Dark Knight soon. But I guess that goes into something that maybe we can talk about a little bit later. But they do have the whole, they get Lao and they have the whole air sky, heist thing from the tower in there. But again, you do have the sort of franchise IP thing that he is working with there. So for this one, you do have that original action story as well. And again, I think you would consider Nolan, more so an action director, but maybe it is because of that Dark Knight type of run as well too. Memento is not an action movie. Again, there is a lot of the same stuff, but it is a little bit more, kind of a drama thriller, I would say, than it is pure action. Hey, chat, shout out to all the first name Nolans. Not quite giving up spot to Christopher Nolan quite yet, but let's see the filmography, because you're not, again, like a movie like Interstellar or Inception as well too. I think maybe that's why Inception does really stand out, but Inception is kind of and Nolan is one of the, of course, more popular, obviously hot take directors. So everybody kind of has their own Nolan movie that stands out in a way. But I feel like, is Tenet the one, Chad? Is Tenet the one that the least people? I don't know. but we kind of gravitate toward this one as well too. And I think again, Inception does have unique pieces. The snow scene is really fun just for the action movie, the larger action movie universe. It's a fun scene to go back and watch on YouTube, and the whole elevator fights. But it is a little bit more, I guess, and this one's obviously high concept as well too, with what he's going for. But again, the actual sort of action itself is a little bit more tactically grounded than the. And I guess, again, we're getting reverse fighting at some point, and there's time warping. Who actually knows what's going on in this movie? But it's a little bit of the cross of the Inception, and I think that is something that this movie could have been as well too. Obviously, with COVID, maybe that put a real damper on just the release of this movie, and this movie having to kind of go focus a little bit more of a streaming thing instead of getting the full theatrical kind of Nolan experience and sort of grand rollout type opening that he can receive for his movies. But and obviously the movie that he does after this in Oppenheimer does become his, at least this point, his, sort of, I guess, magnum opus, if we're using that term correctly, even though the Odyssey, I don't know how that's trending, Chad. I mean, it's Nolan, so it's going to be good, but I don't know if he's got a little too much dip on us. The too much dip on your chip movie, I don't know if we have to go back and do a history of that for the directors. But I'm a little nervous that this may be Nolan's too much dip. Too much guac on the chip, Chad. Hey, next thing you know, right before you take the bite, the chip breaks, and it's like, oh, now we got a mess. But in Tenet, obviously, definitely a little bit messy with some of the plot stuff as well. But you see, again, like I was going to say, with just the action, but just the larger story and what he was working with here, it is sort of some of the tactical grounding action stuff of, say, like Dark Knight, with a little bit more of the high concept Interstellar, Inception type plot points as well. But it just makes it a really fun watch. And I think, we were definitely here in 2020 with COVID, and that definitely pushed us, obviously, into a more streaming-focused era than we had already had been in the past, but maybe more so, maybe not just pushing us into streaming, but maybe even more so, hampering some of the theatrical stuff as well too. But we were definitely in a place where, the TikTok and the reels and the scrolling as you're watching the movie was definitely in place. But as that has definitely continued to increase as well, I think a movie like this does age a little bit better, again, when it is sort of a collection of cool scenes, because on one hand, yeah, maybe you never do know what's going on, and you're like, I'm looking up, I missed 2 scenes, it's like, I have no idea what's going on in the plot. But again, it's Nolan, and he is as good of an action director as anybody, and almost any time that you're looking up in this movie, there's going to be cool action sequences and cool set pieces going on, and makes for, again, a really good background watch, but also if you want to lock in and pay attention as well, too. Again, you're going to get Nolan's storytelling, and I think this one, maybe just because we were still trying to actually figure out the direct, like, the order of the plot points for this movie. Maybe we haven't gotten into the sort of the greater themes. Like, we know the order of the plot for The Dark Knight. Again, you compare, like, we kind of, we know the sequence of events for that movie. We figured out the fact that, oh yeah, spoiler alert, he sent Batman to the wrong destination. He went to pick up Harvey Dent instead of Rachel, and Rachel, we know the sequence of events for that. And now we can kind of unlock the themes that are going on. We haven't necessarily had time to unlock the themes for Tenet. We're still trying to figure out what's happening. But again, I think maybe some of that Nolan-esque stuff is still there as well too. So it does make for a good pay attention movie, even if it is just it can also be, like we're saying, that good background movie as well too. But again, we'll definitely go through this movie and watch along here as it unfolds. But we do have a couple of sports things to mention. We also have Djokovic is playing Fritz in the US Open right now, and because we're having to use the sling to watch Tenet, we're gonna have to pass on the US Open for right now. It is what it is, and Djokovic is up 6-3 in the first set as well too. First game, first set. So I guess Tekken wins that first set, and now they move to the second one kind of easily, chat. We did see this a little bit yesterday with Coco Gauff in Osaka as well too, and I know a little bit different because Osaka is more in the prime years of her career. Obviously, Djokovic is more the superstar trying to, how many times can he dip back into the pool and have one of these great performances? But maybe sort of the guy on the generation, the player in the generation behind, sort of falling and paying respects to the generation beforehand, the legendary player that went before. And I mean, I remember, back to Tenet, AO chat, of course, watching in theaters, you got the intense, or I guess not in theaters, but I remember we did watch this movie for the first time at a friend's house who did have like a home theater setup. So we were fortunate enough to like have a good sound system, big screen to be watching it on. So I guess, when I say in theaters for us, again, fortunately we had a good setup at the time to be able to watch this movie for sure. But yeah, I guess technically it wasn't in theaters. It was on streaming when it dropped. Or did we watch it on, we might have watched it on Blu-ray as well too. I don't know exactly what the whole streaming setup was as well too. What the timeline of streaming services that I had as they were unrolling them out. You just never know. Oh, chat, we got Fritz takes the first game in set 1. Are we learning it right? Should we just look up tennis terms? Hey, yo, chat, we're a sports pod. We're looking up tennis terms for the order of the games. What's a, ace, we got that. What's a set? What's a game? We got the match, I guess. Tennis, tennis set. And then that will let us know what is going on. No, chat, we're not trying to actually buy a tennis set. Let's see. A game consists of a sequence of points. Play with the same players. Oh, chat, the problem is these definitions. They get too technical, and it's like, is the set, the game is the love 30-40 thing, and then the set is the whole thing, chat? Hey, yo, maybe looking up the definitions is going to make it worse. It is what it is. We just need to listen to the announcers and then lock in from there. But, you've got John David Washington. You got a little bit of a torch. I know, Nolan has had some, again, to go back to The Dark Knight, like you do have, obviously, Batman kind of going a little crazy on the Joker there, pause, in the interrogation room, but not the most violent guy. But, John David is maybe one of the more intense scenes in a Nolan movie. Again, it's not crazy. There are a couple of, and, the sort of intensity, what's going to happen of maybe like Memento as well, too. There's some good, obviously, again, reveal tension moments in that. But, yeah, you got a little torture in Tenet, John David Washington going through it to start the movie. But, of course, all for the best because he, turns out it was just a test, chat. Of course, obviously, those types of things would just be tests in these movies. But, yeah, anyways, the, Osaka, and I think, again, because of the rise for Goff, and not just her individually, but also, in the States as well, too, her being the home country player, I think there has been a little bit of narrative stealing in the way from Osaka in that type of limelight, number one face of tennis type aspect. Because, again, when she beat Serena the first time, it did really seem like she was next up as the number one player. And she is still, of course, really highly, I mean, you see her go into that match. She was, she was definitely top 25, maybe 23 in the overall tournament as well. But again, just if we were just talking like hype level, who are people, and again, there is, like we're saying, there's that home team factor with Goff as well. But I think just the tennis stardom was definitely reinforced with Osaka in that game in a major way. In a John David Washington workout scene, chat, the Nolan workout scenes, there is a couple of push-up, pull-up scenes for Nolan in Batman. I guess we never have like a weight scene. Hey, yo, Nolan, big calisthenics guy, chat, but John David Washington up on the ladder, of course, getting locked in, ready to go. And, I mean, John David is, in this movie, of course, we can go through the John David filmography and say what this performance means for him, but to have him in the Nolan, just to have Nolan working with a Washington, AO chat. I mean, maybe even the what-ifs of, the potential other pairings. But, yeah, and again, I forget if this Osaka-Goff match was in the quarterfinals. I think it might have been to advance to the quarterfinals. But it's not one of those losses where it feels like an early elimination because, again, you got two high-powered star-level players. And I wonder if that's the first time that they actually have matched up as well too. But you could see, and the announcers were doing a good job of pointing out as well, that Osaka, of course, was attacking like certain spots of the court for Goff over and over again, and just if it was working, just continuing to attack that. And if Goff is not going to change it, then see what happens. And I feel like this scene here, Chad, is actually one of the important ones again for understanding what's going on in the movie. We got John David Washington with the scientist explanation scene. Is this the only scene that she is in? I'm trying to think. Maybe there's another back in the lab type moment. Hey, yo. But this is, of course, is going to lay out the whole movie. Unfortunately, we're just going to talk over it and not be able to understand. But again, I don't know if this is necessarily one of the major YouTube go back to scenes. Obviously, like we were saying, that opening opera scene is pretty elite for sure. But then you've got like the plane scene, some of the ending scenes as well, just a lot of the temporal fighting type moments. I guess maybe this moment where he is realizing what's going on with the reverse bullets and stuff is pretty watchable as well. But I mean, again, Nolan has always been able really good to sort of balance the in-between scenes with the action scenes, and you still feel like there's a little something going on in every scene where even if this is, again, more exposition at this moment. And again, for a Nolan exposition scene, this is going to be about as complicated as you're going to get here. So it's like you either have to commit to not knowing, or if you're going to try to figure it out, chat, hey, yo, maybe we need to go back and check out our guy Eric Voss and see what his videos were about this movie, because I think he's probably one of there's like 4 people on the planet that can understand. It's like Tenet is like, it's like both of the Nolan brothers, Eric Voss, and then maybe, who knows, like a couple other random film nerds can understand what's going on in this movie and then translate it to us. But hey, shout out, Chad. That's why they're the best in the biz. But yeah, I think that for, again, Osaka to be reestablished in that way, and I think that's her event a little bit as well too. They were saying that she's won a couple of majors, but like, and Fritz, I guess, is back up a little bit in this game here. He's up 2-1 this set game, chat. This game set, he's up 2-1 on Djokovic. So maybe the veteranism, is that a new word, chat? Hey, yo, the veteranism of Jokic is gonna of Jokic. Who are we talking? Who's playing tennis right now, chat? The veteranism of Djokovic is gonna maybe take its toll over the course of the match. But yesterday did end up being kind of a fun sports day. Of course, yesterday was our travel back day, so we were in the airport for a little bit of the day, and there was a situation on the connecting flight at Arizona where there were some storms and it was some delays, and it's like, oh man, is this gonna be a long haul? Turned out it wasn't too bad. I mean, it ends up pushing into the night, but it's better than now we're in the airport 20 hours or whatever, and now we're, rebooking stuff, hotels, whatever. It's like, okay, just a little bit of a delay, make you nervous, and then we're back on the road. It's totally fine. But again, we were pretty well entertained just hanging out in the airport. And, airports are, like, people have obviously made this point before, but airports are a pretty good place to get work done. You can be pretty productive at an airport, for sure. But to just have on a good sports day in the background as well, too, definitely helps power you through. But from the tennis side, again, we had that matchup was going to be about as high-powered of a tennis matchup as you're just going to get in the tournament in general. But there was also a doubles match with Venus Williams, and they ended up, it seemed like a pretty good, underdog upset, and has been a nice run for that duo, for Venus Williams duo to now advance into the quarterfinals for that side of the bracket. But ended up being a really good match as well, too. And then that carried over into the Belichick-TCU game, which, unfortunately, and I think, the college football week in general in terms of quality, maybe not quite the A+. And, that North Carolina-TCU game, obviously, really spiraled out of control there. But, like we all know, that first drive was pretty fun. And I think, is Belichick headed for sort of the D, we don't want to say the Dion, route for the hype, but is the wins maybe a little bit closer to the 500 type range, maybe kind of getting a little bit, some of the wins on some of the lower opponents. Who knows? In TCU, they weren't a ranked team, but Hoover was one of the more experienced returning quarterbacks. And, Sonny Dykes is a coach, definitely just a more experienced staff as well, too. Again, obviously Belichick, like if we're just talking staffs, in theory, that's about, obviously the reason you bring him in is because you hope that's about as good as you can get there. But they did have this receiver as well too, and I forget his name. Here, let's see if we can go back and look at the score of this one really quick. And I don't know what his final stat line ended up being. I don't know if they just ended up like triple teaming him in the second half because, again, we were in the airport for a little bit, but once there was like some delays, we were like, okay, this game's getting out of control. Maybe we have to conserve some battery. Like, I don't know if watching North Carolina down 30 is the best use of limited phone battery at this time, but at least early on, like we were saying, it was a fun game. We did get, I guess neither of these teams are ranked here. We'll have to sort it by we'll have to sort it by unranked teams. But again, I guess we could look to see where North Carolina was at last year as well. Shout out. I don't remember exactly if Belichick has taken over from Mac Brown. Was there a coach that was the bridge coach there for a season? But Mac Brown did get that team to, be a competitive team, and they were a feisty bowl level team there for a second. Definitely working their way up the rankings. I know maybe it started to turn the other direction. And obviously, they didn't get a younger coach, not necessarily, but trying to at least mix it up and get something else. Okay, shout out Max Johnson. I was seeing the post, and he did check in. I guess, of course, Gio Lopez got the start in that game. Max Johnson was 9 for 11, 103 and a touchdown. He does have a little bit more Power 5 experience than Gio Lopez. I think Gio Lopez, if I remember correctly, is a transfer from Sam Houston State. And then maybe Max Johnson was at Texas A&M. Maybe a couple other schools as well too, Chad. I don't know. But I think there was a Texas A&M stop in there as well. And again, he was definitely checking in at a different point in the game. So competitively, his reps were definitely going to be a little bit easier. And the running back did have a longer touchdown there that definitely, he was being productive outside of that as well too. But definitely helped boost his stats with the 75-yard touchdown run. I think that was the first play of the second half, which was tough. You see the second and third quarters, 13 outscored him, 34 to 7 over that stretch of the game there. But yeah, Jordan Dwyer, chat, 9 receptions for 136 and a touchdown. Because of the NFL stuff, you don't want to say that he reminds you of Quentin Johnson, but he did have that kind of big outside, just jump ball, one-on-one, could kind of win any matchup type vibe. And I don't know, again, the talent of the secondary that North Carolina was supposed to have, but that was a matchup. Oh, is he a freshman? Hey, yo. I don't know if there was he's a junior. Okay, so I don't know if there's a transfer situation in there. It's not listing any smaller schools here on the box score. But starting off his Power 5 career with a great start. Where is he at? Okay, number 8 in yards from scrimmage from the Big 12. I guess there have been a couple of two-game teams at this point as well. But, 6 foot, 195 is not even necessarily, again, in that sort of tall receiver type range, but there was a jump ball thing with him that almost, gets him in that sort of peak receiver build. Hey, yo, chat, pause. I don't know if to pause that, but maybe Jordan Dwyer's a guy here. Do we have to check Tankathon? Maybe Tankathon's done a week 1 update at this point as well too. But Tankathon, add him to the list. Hey, yo, Jordan Dwyer's a guy. And, maybe we're a little bit more, I guess, not like sold on Quentin Johnson's upside, but maybe just more scarred by his college career because, again, of what he was able to do against Michigan in that college football game. But they've got, quite a few receivers ranked. I guess they've got the lowest ranked receiver at 106, and then 3 receivers also from the 2027 class to mention as well, too. It's just kind of the higher level guys. Nick Harbor from South Carolina, 64. Yeah, he's one of those insane high school guys, if I remember correctly. Carnell Tate, 28. Okay, Chad. Obviously, the receiver class, as usual, shaping up to be pretty talented. And a couple of USC guys, I guess something to keep an eye on for USC for this season as well, too. Not necessarily crazy stats for Jacoby Lane, 3 for 33 in the first game, but 7 for 90 for Makai Lemon. Hey, yo, Chad, Don Lemon's son's playing college football for USC. Do we have Snoop Dogg and Don Lemon's son? Hey, yo, I don't know, the IT, Google and see if there's a relationship there, but 7 for 90 for him in that game would be a pretty good start as well. So, yeah, I guess, I don't know, it's saying junior. I'm guessing there's draft eligibility here from him if he's had, because it's not like you have to play Power 5 for a certain amount of years. You just, you don't even have to play Power 5, obviously. You just have to be out of high school or whatever I guess rules would be if there's like an international prospect or whatever. But I would assume that there would be draft eligibility for our guy this year. So I don't know. Maybe the combine measurables would be back a little bit lower than maybe we're looking at for watching on tape. But just in that game, he definitely was dominant. It was definitely something that they were going to over and over again in the first half. But again, that first drive was awesome. And Gio Lopez, like we're saying, getting the start from the smaller school. I think you watch the highlights. It's like, okay, you can definitely see the potential. Oh, Chad, I forgot about the scene where they infiltrate up the building. Yeah, that's a good one as well too. Again, there's just a lot of, this is Nolan, a lot of practical effects. You don't necessarily, and you don't have, like, if you have Batman in, Inception, you can go into some worlds where like they're floating around. There's a little bit of a supernatural element. You do get a little bit of, you're in space and it's more time dilation stuff. I don't even know if time dilation is the right term there for that, but it's a little bit more intergalactic messing around with in Interstellar. But again, it's a little supernatural sci-fi as well too, where again, the stunts in this, it's just he has to pull off practical stunts. Because I'm sure even when they go to the temporal thing, it's just more them like just working their way back through the timeline. Like they don't get super powered or have like floating abilities or whatever. Maybe not, knowledge of what happened at given moments. But just in terms of physically, I think they're, going back to same chat, hey, yo. But, or, I don't know if there's a Benjamin Button situation, if you can get a little bit younger, hey, yo, going backwards as well. But you got arms dealers in this one, Chad. I mean, Nolan's got arms dealer villains is definitely just sort of a classic action hero villain that maybe is a little bit, because I guess like the villains in Interstellar is just, what is it, time itself? I don't know, maybe some of the, I don't know, like the higher powered guys running the mission stuff going on maybe. But again, Inception, you got some old guy millionaire. I mean, again, that's kind of basic as well too, but they're trying to take out they're obviously attacking a dream, which is a little bit interesting. Memento, I mean, who, again, speaking of who knows what's going on, I feel like maybe Nolan just needs that intro from The Prestige as like his producer drop. Like Metro Boomin has his producer drop for every song. Like Nolan should just start every movie with, "Are you paying attention?" And then we're like, "Oh yeah, this is a Nolan movie, chat, lock in, we gotta pay attention." Again, The Prestige, kind of one of the ones for Nolan that we don't revisit a lot. I guess, again, maybe arms dealers, and I guess what even is the group that John David is associated for? I guess again, we're just so focused on the plot. It's like, what's the group? But maybe more Secret Service, and the tactical stuff is definitely a little bit more up our lane than the Magician stuff. Which again, shout out the Magician stuff. It's cool as well too. I mean, Now You See Me 3. I guess we'll watch it when it hits streaming, chat. But yeah, I don't know if there's a magician. What kind of magic can what kind of magic can Bill Belichick pull at North Carolina? I don't know if Bill Belichick needs to go into the Tenet time reversal thing to make some relationship stuff, maybe make the perception of that, clean that up a little bit. But again, on that first drive, it did seem like, I wonder if we had like Belichick kind of back in his old sort of coaching bat, because the thing that made Belichick so great, amongst many things, eventually when we got to that Patriots one was, and some of the game planning stuff as well too, but his ability to scout out and find this talent. And I think Max Johnson, again, for as good as he's played in college football, I don't think it's necessarily would have been shocking for, again, Gio Lopez to go in there and win the job as well. But with the way he was playing that first drive, it was like, oh, look at this. They've gone out in the transfer portal, 70 new guys. Like Belichick somehow scouted it out and figured it out, and this guy's the next, at least their bowl level, really good quarterback that they can have at North Carolina and lead a competent drive. And even the game planning stuff, it was like, Belichick, he's just too good for these people. Just right up the field, the first drive, they can't stop him. What do you do? So, again, I don't know if this is sort of that, because, again, Deion's had this at Colorado where, and I think from some of the game planning stuff as well, too, I think Belichick's going in with a little bit more advantage than Deion. I don't know if having Steven Belichick next to his side gives him that advantage, but, again, or maybe the Belichick mind at the end of the day is the thing that we're relying on. But, again, Deion in that first year, even though he had Travis Hunter and Shador and some really talented guys, there was still a major roster overhaul that had to happen, and they were definitely a little bit weaker at some spots in the roster for sure. So again, they've got 70 new guys in. They're just the whole gelling. I don't. Can you even have 70 guys on a college roster? Like now that I think about it, they kept saying that on the broadcast, and I guess the limit is what, like 55. So I don't even know. I guess college, it's not pro. Is it one of those like you can't kick guys off the college team? Hey yo, I don't know. Is there a secret JV team at North Carolina that we don't know about? But which Belichick's son is coaching the JV team? But yeah, again, there's just all these new guys, and we just don't know. I guess even what again the FBS sort of talent level is individually for him as well. But it did seem like early on, like we said, there was a game planning scouting thing that looked like it was going to be in his advantage, but TCU did end up really down. And I know that there was some outcoach stuff, because you could say that maybe North Carolina didn't make some adjustments in the right type of way. But again, the way that TCU was really dominating in that stretch was just feeding Dwyer. Barnes got a great run. They definitely had some great blocking moments there that had him freed up for that one specifically. But like you don't know I guess I don't know the front. Are they up to, because Colorado again, they had the smaller front. I guess we're not. Do you have to compare North Carolina to Colorado? But there does seem to be definitely some parallels there with the hype, at least for both those guys going in. But both of them super hyped but unranked. I don't know if that's the only parallel at the time. But I do wonder, and I know that the move from NFL to college is obviously not a new move, but it does. I wonder if maybe the prestige of coaching in college there for a little bit, maybe the 2000s, early 2020s here, if it did start to fade, because it didn't seem like we did have the NFL guys going to college in the same type of way. And again, even Urban Meyer at one point did leave for the NFL. I know Saban, like there was that whole rumor about the Browns wanting to get Saban and Arch Manning next year, and I guess again, Saban returning to coaching would be the most shocking thing in the world. I guess there was also an Auburn rumor for Saban, which would be hilarious. Just like, I guess he's only going to coach rivals. It's just like a rival school connection thing that he does. It's just, okay, LSU to Alabama, then Alabama to Auburn. I guess maybe he starts running out of, because Alabama, Auburn. But then I guess you could just go like Auburn, Georgia, Auburn. Any SEC team at that point would probably work. But him returning to the NFL would be maybe a little bit more interesting than him returning to college, obviously, and just the decision of that, and then what that means maybe for the current state of college. But I wonder if it is a good move, and especially like we're saying, the current state of college is a little bit more professional. And I think if we're comparing Dion, I think he would be a guy that, again, if we're even saying that there would be more success than he's had right now in Colorado, there would be sort of a professional timeline with his coaching, I think, that would happen at some point. And he's always talked about, I guess, his desire to, continue to coach in college. And that is really what he loves doing, is training up the guys in that aspect of the game. But it just seems like with his personality and with his business acumen as well, too, that they're just with the right opportunity and the NFL was there, that at least he wouldn't, again, try it out for a contract or two and see what's going on. But now with the more professionalization of college football, the NIL stuff, and the way that you can sort of transfer free agency these teams now, I wonder if for the NFL guys specifically, it does become a little bit more of a viable option. Again, head coach, because I guess you do got like Chip Kelly's like the offensive coordinator, was like the offensive coordinator. Is he still the offensive coordinator at Ohio State? I don't know, how much are we looking up the Ohio State? We'll just try not to pay attention as much as possible. But maybe some of the, like, if Mike McDaniel says, if things don't go right for Mike McDaniel in the NFL this year in Miami, does he go back to being an offensive coordinator in the NFL? Because, again, I think, at least me personally, even if the coaching stuff doesn't work out this year, I would still have stock in him as an offensive coordinator. If the Colts announced, I guess, hey, what happens this year if we're announcing a new staff? But I guess, if we announce that we're bringing in McDaniels to work next to Steichen, we're going to be positive, Chad. Hey, like, I definitely would buy in that move. And I don't know if you start getting nervous about, obviously, McDaniels is the interim at whatever, 2026 week, 7 at that point, 2026-7 at that, for that next season. Hey, we haven't got to this season yet. But would it be a move, would the better move for him to be just go to the college and have the hype of being the head coach and being the lead of a team? And again, I think the way you can build a roster a little bit more professionally maybe lends itself to be a little bit more interesting for some of these guys. Because again, like, he would be a high level sort of, I think, still a guy that NFL teams would probably be looking at. they wouldn't necessarily be writing off the first job of Mike McDaniels. And I don't know if he's sort of a one guy, because, would Steichen have necessarily the same hype? I guess to some degree, an NFL coach, obviously, there is going to be some hype there. But like I say, it does seem like the NFL stuff has definitely stayed around a little bit. But even Colorado, they have Pat Shurmur now, who has, again, I guess made his way back into college football at this point. So I guess, I don't know if there would have been a head coaching job for Pat Shurmur. He's kind of been stuck as an assistant for a while. I guess I'm trying to think positively. Like, I don't want to necessarily think early on about, which coaches are going to be up for jobs first. But a guy like Daboll as well, too. Like, Daboll, I think because he's seems like he's a good quarterback coach, and because it seems like maybe they have a quarterback now in Jackson Dart, that his sort of immediate future in New York is a little bit safer than maybe it was, this time last year. But he would be a guy that, is he a little bit too kind of powerful / has just been the head coach? Like, does he want to go back to being an assistant as well too? I don't know if that's a part of it, where you can kind of just stay in charge. But, I guess that this is what Harbaugh did as well when the San Francisco thing stopped working out there, was he ended up going back to college. I think he could have been, obviously, and once the Michigan stuff started to go well, he could have been a NFL head coach for multiple seasons there. But was in a Super Bowl, had multiple playoff successful runs, like, was definitely a guy that probably, and maybe we go back and remember, like, relationally what the vibes were there, if teams were like, okay, let's just sign up to work with Jim Harbaugh again. But I think that he would have still been a desired NFL candidate at some point. Vrabel, of course, took a year off of coaching and was able to get right back in it with the Pats. So maybe if you're a guy at sort of that, and that's maybe a more unique case as well too, where it seemed like, of course, the situation spiraled a little bit out of his control with some of the quarterback opportunities that they had available. Oh, chat, and speaking of, rewatchable scenes for our Tenet movie, we do have the kitchen fight up. Honestly, I just have wanted to rewatch this movie just to get to this kitchen fight. So should we lock in? Because, watching the scenes on YouTube is fun, but also watching the lead up into the scene is, or AKA watching the movie, is also pretty fun as well. And this is right up there with John David's sort of best stunt work in his career, best action scenes. A kitchen fight as well too. We get to see him sort of use the kitchen appliances to his benefit, and that is sort of a, it's a little kind of Mission Impossible-esque, I would say, with the vibes of this fight. I don't know if there's some bathroom scene fight parallels exactly, but it does have that vibe a little bit. And the way he just strolls out of the building afterwards, kind of buttons up the suit, is of course very classy. And I think obviously because he is, the name, he's John David Washington, he's Denzel's son, and because there is obviously just but there's that DNA that is literally shared there. Like, there's gonna be some probably personality things that cross over a little bit. So, in some ways that is obviously awesome. It's like, hey, is there in some ways, you could recapture Denzel as an actor in some different roles and some different vibes in movies, but also if that is your thing, not just even, for his son, but maybe for any actor, it was like, oh, this guy coming up is like really comparable to Denzel, and you could see him in a lot of the roles and a lot of the vibes, and carries himself charismatically in a same type of way. Like, I think you could say that Majors definitely could play some of the Denzel, like, he has a charisma. I think it's maybe a little bit different, and obviously he's a little bit more, I think jacked up, like muscular, like and his role, he played that bodybuilder role as well too. Like, I don't know if you ever get Denzel in like a bodybuilder role necessarily. I think he could have, 100% get as ripped as any guy for a movie, for sure. But again, I don't think that was necessarily the number one thing that he was trying to achieve in all of his roles as well. But for him to, for John David to have to at least be in that lane, again, he is able to, those Denzel kind of traits that you see, he's able to definitely maximize them. But I think he's able to bring his own sort of uniqueness to his characters as well too. Because I was thinking about this when, it's like, okay, we're going to queue up Tenet for the rewatch. Now it's available on streaming. And I guess it is the fifth, like we mentioned earlier as well too, the 5th anniversary of this movie this week. So, I don't know if this is the quickest anniversary that we've done for a rewatch or an album re-listen or something. But again, this is obviously, classic in the rotation the last couple years when we can get to it. But I was thinking about what would Denzel be like in this role, and how would he carry himself in some of the action scenes. And I guess, you could obviously just actor level to actor level make comparisons. What other great actors could play a lead in a certain movie. But again, just the beats of the way the guy is gonna be. I think John David is obviously able to get to all those beats in an A+ level for what you needed out of the protagonist in this movie. And, still, I think tends to be an underrated leading man type guy. And again, this is a perfect, like we saw with basically almost every actor that's worked with a major creator in a successful movie like this. And I guess you could say maybe the instant sort of critical success of this movie as well, too, it's just being a little confusing. Maybe kind of took away from just the bigger moment of it as well. And it sort of had to have, a little bit of, a build sort of afterwards. But you think about like what Murphy was able to have accomplished with his career after a movie like Oppenheimer, and the biographical nature of that performance, and for him to portray a character that well is obviously there's a little bit of a level to that for sure. But for like what we saw this year with Michael B. Jordan with Coogler, and again, there's obviously that performance is different. He's two guys, so again, these performances stand out because they're even asked to do a little bit more as well too. But you do have a star that hasn't quite had the breakout lead performance yet, working with the creator in a really good movie, and that all the things should have lined up again for him to have sort of that big breakout moment. And I really do think that it was more so the COVID stuff than anything, that and just the critics being confused by it, that kind of took away from what happened from from that just kind of being like a in the moment sort of hyped up, and again sort of obviously the pre-hype for the movie. There's going to be that just general level of anticipation for any sort of Nolan project, especially up to this point in his career in the 2020s as well too. But hey, Chad, we're still rambling about Nolan. I forgot we just had the North Carolina TCU game up in the background. Was there anything else should we mention anything else about this game quickly? Hey, again, that first drive, it really did seem like, but I wouldn't necessarily take that first drive lightly. Hey, I guess it's more, we'll just have to put that in comparison with the scope of the rest of the season as well too. But I'm not giving up hope in him making this a competitive team. I think, again, there is sort of is there in the back of our minds that, like, will he make this sort of a national title team like it is Bill Belichick? Like, what at the end of the day is the actual level? And, I don't know is it like, does he get another job after this, like 2 years at North Carolina? It's like, oh, Bill Belichick's really cooking, and now he's the LSU head coach, and now he's going to go win a national title at LSU. Or maybe he becomes, I don't know, is he going for the Saban job? Is he trying to be the Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, Chat, look out, Belichick's coming for your job if he starts winning these games. Hey, But, again, I think him just making this sort of basically a better version of a team that it's been the last couple of years would also be successful as well too. Like, he just needs positivity for the seasons, because I think that was something that was lost in New England there a little bit. I know that obviously the talent decreased, the quarterback situation with Mac Jones and there was a Cam Newton season in there. Like, there was definitely some interesting opportunities, but I think at the end of the day it makes sense why some of those teams were a little bit unsuccessful. But again, Belichick wasn't necessarily constructing the best rosters and preparing them as properly as they should have been going into some of those games. So it just felt like, again, the positivity, the overachieving nature, Belichick being able to maximize the guys, all of that stuff was kind of starting to take a little bit of a tumble at the end of his run there in New England. So for him to have some winning, overachieving, better vibes at the end of the season than the season started is more so important than just, are they in the playoffs winning? And I guess, eventually if they get to playoff expectations, then it is what it is. Oh, they had Freddie Kitchens for one game last year. Hey, is Freddie Kitchens on the returning staff? Freddie Kitchens, the offensive coordinator. So they were 6-7. So a 500 team, a little bit of a losing record. 8-5 in 2023. Here, let's go school history. Lost in the Duke Mayo Bowl as well. And then 9-5 the year before that. Lost in the Holiday Bowl. Oh, they did win the Duke Mayo Bowl in 2021 on a 6-7 season. 8-4 in 2020. and 7-6 in 2019. So again, Mac Brown, like, and you really see, and Larry Fedora, he was there for quite a couple years, had gotten them to 11-3 in 2015, a top 10 team. So they were kind of cooking, even though they lost the Russell Athletic Bowl. But 3-9 and 2-9. So you bring in Mac Jones to kind of reestablish stuff. So he gets 7 wins, 8 wins, 6 wins. But then to bounce up to 9 wins, I guess they did get up to a top 15 team at number 13 that year as well. Maybe he kind of was like, okay, do we have to see if he's able to maybe go up one more level from here and give him another shot? And he was still 8-5 the year after that. And then it was like, okay, I guess maybe it's time to see if we can try something else after it seemed like it was going to be 500. So, kind of a 500 competitive team. I guess, unfortunately, not necessarily winning the bowl games as well, too. 5 straight bowl losses is not going to help his case, even though that 5th loss is on. That one's on Freddie Kitchens. Hey, yo, chat. The Fenway Bowl, Mac Brown had nothing to do with that. His hands are clean. But 2 Duke Mayo Bowl losses. Hey, North Carolina losing in the Duke Mayo Bowl has got to be like a double, that's got to be doubly painful. Orange Bowl, obviously good appearance, though, for them being that 13th overall team at the end of the season in 2020. But they can definitely, be a top, I guess, top 15 is sort of the high end of their 21st century runs so far. And they've only won 3 bowl games this century. I guess 4 bowl games this century. Shout out one of them back in 2001 Peach Bowl, then the 2010 Music City Bowl, 2013 Belk Bowl, and then the 2019 Military Bowl. So that was Mac Brown's first year there, and they went 7-6. So I guess we could see what their over-under was this year. I don't know if it was in that 500 range again as well. But I feel like that the first year, maybe they win the bowl game, and then if Belichick is able to get this team to like a 10-11 win team, I guess I forget like how many games do you get? That'd be like 11-2. It'd be obviously pretty good. If they're winning, do they have to win the ACC for them to have the good vibes? That would obviously be a nice way to, put a goal on everything, is to have that kind of accomplishment. But I do think there is a little vagueness in how successful this team could be to view the Belichick tenure as a success, because even some more, like if they're going up against Clemson, do we expect like a Belichick team like this to actually take down a Clemson roster? I know maybe Clemson week to week is not the most consistent team right now, but still the talent is definitely there. But if they're hanging with some of these top teams, I guess here, what's their schedule? And again, it did look kind of tough this year. And it was funny how the broadcast kind of switched up a little bit the pieces that they were running, because pregame, 3 of the 4 guys picked Belichick. Literally just was like, we love Belichick. We're just picking Belichick. And I guess, I don't know, do we have to just actually start from the beginning of the game? Because they had the pre-interview, we're talking about the Belichick coaching. We got literally, the airplane's about to crash into the airport here in our Tenet rewatch. We're just rambling about Bill Belichick's debut chat. It is what it is. Sorry to John, once again, John David Washington. Hey, yo, shout out. But, he's our guy, Chad. It is what it is. But, they had the pregame interview with Holly Rowe, and he's kind of doing the old school Belichick simple answers, but he just does this smile now at the end of every time he's done talking with like a question. He just does this smile, which is like, okay, I'm still Bill Belichick. I'm not really trying to give up any information, but also I'm trying to be nice. And it's just, I don't know if that's a Hudson move or if that's that's just like an ESPN move. But I feel like he was doing that a little bit more just in the studios as well, too, where he would just be like making a point and kind of be a little monotone. And I mean, even if he's monotone, obviously he can still be impassioned about what he's talking about. It's just Belichick's a little bit more low-key vibe. But at least, in the podium, I don't know, Belichick and other aspects of his life, what's going on there. But because I guess even before Hudson, chat, there was that Ring video we got of Belichick. So make no mistake, Belichick is on the town, chat. Belichick will go out on the weekends. It is what it is. Belichick is making moves. So maybe the Hudson thing we should have been a little bit more prepared for that, honestly. But yeah, I guess what were we even saying there about Belichick? Who knows, chat? Hey, yo, it is what it is. But yeah, I guess, again, for the vibes of the season, I think it is a little bit more, he doesn't necessarily have to just win the ACC for this tenure to be considered a success. But that I think maybe that would just be us being like, no, you know what, Belichick did do a good job here. Like, it's okay, only winning 8 games 3 years in a row. But we'll see how the recruiting thing. But I guess what we were saying is the switch up of the, that's what it was. That we were talking about just the smile he did at the end of all of the questions. But then they did the interview. Everybody picked Belichick. They're like, Belichick's our guy. We love working with Belichick at ESPN. It was Teddy Bruschi, who again played for Belichick, Nick Saban, who Belichick drafted all of his players, and Pat McAfee, who I think had Belichick on his show for a second there. I know Belichick was also on the Manning cast, but I think there was a Belichick-Pat McAfee relationship as well. So all three of those guys were literally just like, we love Bill Belichick. He's our guy. We're picking him. Shout out our, Desmond Howard, of course, the only reasonable guy on the, shout out, makes the TCU pick. Also probably scarred from watching TCU. Again, Michigan, it's trauma, chat. Hey, yo, we're just kind of blindly picking TCU in these. We're not picking against them for the next couple of years. It is what it is. But, yeah, then they have like we're saying, the first drive, it seems like Belichick's back, and then Dwyer just ends up taking over the game. So if that is the end of the day, like their secondary is just this major weakness, then, obviously we'll see how Belichick is able to fix that and sort of the recruiting stuff as well, too. And do they have TBD on all the games because they thought they were going to get some more primetime minutes here, chat? Hey, yo, they're just like, just in case North Carolina Clemson's like a crazy matchup, we're going to be putting that in prime time. But otherwise, it's like North Carolina Clemson noon. Hey, yo, North Carolina 0-4. But Charlotte, Richmond, UCF, the next three. I mean, 48-14 is concerning, chat. I'm not gonna lie. That's kind of concerning. Like, you assume Charlotte, they would be okay, but the interstate rival, I don't know. Is Charlotte going to be motivated? Okay, they're also 0-1. They got 11 points in the last game. They gave up 34. So, Connor Harrell, the quarterback, 142 and a touchdown. Not really able. 15 for 49 on the ground from CJ Stokes. So, I don't know if that was, who did they play? Were they just crazy week 1 Power 5 matchup that they got overwhelmed? Okay, Appalachian State got them 34-11. So, I don't know, chat. Maybe we're revealing that we are kind of a... We're rooting. I mean, maybe we're also biased for Belichick. I guess we wouldn't have necessarily. Well, maybe we would have picked him to win. I guess we're wrong, chat. Make it 4 out of 5 guys on the panel. Desmond Howard still would have been the only reasonable one. We would have picked Belichick too. It is what it is. He's the guy. But you would assume that the Charlotte Richmond games, they'd be 2-1 going into UCF, and then you're back into the Power 5. At that point as well, too. Clemson at 4 is the only other ranked team they play right now. And no Virginia Tech, who was making South Carolina, giving them a little bit of a run. The Duke matchup will be interesting. I know that's not the same expectations as football, but also, if he loses the rivalry games as well, that definitely will hurt. I feel like Wake Forest, North Carolina, is a Wake Forest, North Carolina, Duke, or is that about as much of a football rivalry as Duke, North Carolina? I know Wake Forest is not the most successful football team, but I don't know if maybe North Carolina fans are like a little brother thing with Wake Forest as well too. But then NC State maybe, has had at times the best football team of the three. I guess at times maybe better players than the three of these guys. But that'll be maybe as important stretch of any, is just those interstate rival teams, is just making the fan base happy in that type of way. But speaking of the talented players, Chad, this was something that I was thinking about as well too. And unfortunately, because I don't know if it was because of the storming stuff, but the in-plane Wi-Fi wasn't actually available. So they did have, unfortunately, like the in-plane entertainment on the flight we were on. So we still had the movie access, chat. They had The Bodyguard on the plane. So that's the quickest movie we've ever clicked on. The quickest plane movie that we've ever watched. But so okay, I guess. And that's speaking of movies that aren't ever on streaming, chat. Hey, yo, can we get the YouTube? Clutch up here and get The Bodyguard on YouTube. I feel like we kind of willed above the rim into being free on YouTube. I'm not going to lie, because we were just talking about that. And then I looked up the other day and I was like, whoa, it's free. We can watch this one. And they were just like, we'll get, the LeBron Deluxe. Here's another one for you. They just gave us Any Given Sunday for free as well, too. So we're going to be satisfied. Hey, pause, going into the sports season here. From a free with ads YouTube movie standpoint. But can we get, can we get The Bodyguard free on YouTube as well? Somebody over at, Alphabet make that work. But for, the for like we were saying, that starts of the season, that would be pretty important for Belichick to take a good take some wins out there later on. But overall, you could still see them having a pretty good year, and maybe Max Johnson is a guy that they can have be the number one quarterback going forward. I don't know if it's going to be a battle situation again. Lopez made some throws where his arm talent. I don't know if we'd have to go back and watch more Max Johnson highlights, but his arm talent's definitely there. I guess we can't say for a fact if it's just straight up better than Max Johnson's, but the accuracy and the read stuff, obviously we'll have to see if that continues to improve, and maybe just with the more exposure to the top talent as well too. But I guess like we were saying, hey chat, we're all over the place tonight. It is what it is. I guess this pod's gonna be like Tenet. We've just got narratives and takes just overlapping all over the place. It is what it is. But they were talking about, because of course, it's like we've got the legendary Bill Belichick in North Carolina. We've got to do a whole history of North Carolina football. And it's like, and maybe because of the uncertainty of the season, it's like going into the season, this is like the time to hype it up as well too. Again, it's like you just got to be safe maybe a little bit the first year. You never know. But they were again talking about the legendary North Carolina players, and I guess I didn't realize that both Lawrence Taylor and Julius Peppers were from North Carolina. So again, those guys obviously weren't playing on the team at the same time. But if you think about a same position group, just duo that a team could have, because I guess I was thinking like that could also just make the North Carolina all-time team competitive in a way as well too. Like, speaking of Belichick, the Giants, all those connections. Of course, the Giants this year with their strong defensive line definitely gives them an advantage in having just such a strong unit on the field, maybe even the best unit on the field in every game, that you feel like that there's a competitiveness they can have week to week, especially if they can, again, get some of the other stuff worked out as well too with the quarterback spot. But I don't know. I was going to say, I don't know who else they had on the all-time team to sort of help those two guys out. And maybe offensively, some of the skill guys, again, maybe quarterback stuff. I don't know if Gio Lopez and Max Johnson will be battling out for all-time quarterback. Is Mitchell Trubisky the best quarterback in North Carolina history? I don't know if we have to look that up here. We're missing an obvious guy. But you got, I guess, Jonathan Cooper, offensive lineman, All-American 2012. I guess maybe some other names that maybe we're not as familiar with. But yeah, I guess, clearly the two best players just in general as well in North Carolina history. And you think like running backs and receivers and the way that some of those units have been stacked. I mean, it's, just right now, you think of the way that some of the colleges have produced the receivers where, is Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase a better all-time duo than Lawrence Taylor and Julius Peppers? I almost said Jabril Peppers. Ayo, shout out. But Julius Peppers, like right now, obviously it's not. Could it be? I mean, maybe. They're obviously really talented, but those are like two of the maybe top 10 guys at their position all time. I don't know if we're doing, all-time defensive rankings at this point. Clearly Lawrence Taylor is an argument for best defensive player straight up all time. If not, he's kind of obviously the one guy that would be the most unanimous for just that entire side of the field being the greatest person. But the receiver thing, I couldn't think, I was going to look up here just any of the other top, because even the quarterbacks as well too. Is there a school that has produced like two of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time? I guess Texas Tech with Baker and Mahomes in the league right now. I don't know if they're going to quite get in the mix yet. But Michigan, Breeze at Purdue, chat, like Tennessee. And again, sometimes it's just random. Like you got Favre from, was he Southern Miss? Pitt, or Roethlisberger from Miami, Ohio. Wasn't Rivers from North Carolina State? Matt Ryan from Boston College. Moreno's from Pitt. Moreno and Kenny Pickett? Probably not, chat. Warren Moon, Grambling State. Ayo, shout out. Stanford, John Elway and Andrew Luck. Honestly, that would have been a case. John Elway was Stanford, right? Ayo, maybe just if we're talking about top end talent, let's double check here. Yeah, he was Stanford because he was on that Stanford Cal game, and I was like, he wasn't on the Cal side of that game as well too. Where did Dan Fouts go to college at? Hey, yo, chat, is Dan Fouts the wild card in this whole thing? Oregon. Whoa, Fouts is an Oregon guy. Is Fouts the best NFL Oregon quarterback of all time? Hey, yo, what would Fouts have been like in Chip Kelly's offense? I don't know. Kerry Collins? I feel like he might have been a smaller school guy, but I could be wrong. Ooh, Penn State? Okay, so definitely a big school for sure. I don't know if they have the other top guy. Wilson from Wisconsin? Is there like sneaky another Wisconsin guy? Oh, wasn't Wilson also maybe NC State as well too? So is NC State like the best all-time quarterback school? But again, if we're talking Russell Wilson, oh yeah, Wisconsin. So North Carolina State to Wisconsin. I think they have it listed backward order here on the profile reference page. So, again, with all due respect to Rivers and Russell Wilson, like those guys aren't Julius Peppers and Lawrence Taylor as well. So that is probably about as good as you're going to get for the quarterback spot. I guess, wait a second, wasn't Unitas from Louisville? Ooh, so if you did have Unitas in Lamar, chat, that actually might be number one. And again, Lamar's career is still going on as well too. So he's not necessarily here in the all-time passing yards. And obviously there's a two-way thing with his game as well too. I mean, he's got the 2 MVP awards at this point. How many did Unitas have? 3. So 5 MVPs from Louisville. I guess Manning's got 5 alone. So Tennessee is up there as well too. But Louisville might actually be the number one. Hey, yo, so again, I guess we're going to have to try to consider some of the modern guys as we do this as well, too. I guess, is there anybody else from Mississippi State to help compete with Dak Prescott? I don't know. But again, if we just keep going down the list, like we're just out of the range at this point. Ron Jaworski, shout out. I guess Terry Bradshaw. LSU? So Terry Bradshaw and Joe Burrow, was Terry Bradshaw LSU, or was he from a different, maybe smaller Louisiana school? I don't know. Oh, Louisiana Tech. That's right. Okay, shout out. Not Louisiana State. Louisiana Tech. Joe Namath might have been... Oh, he was Alabama. I was going to say USC. One of those quarterbacks. But yeah, he was Bama. So Bama, maybe the stats, they've had the other guys up here, but I don't know if they've quite had the other guys to hit the prestige of, shout out, Joe Namath. Hey, yo. Jameis Winston, 87th all time in passing yards over Arch Manning. I guess you do have Arch and Eli, both from Mississippi, for sure. Oh, Herbert. So it'd be Herbert and Dan Fouts. That's kind of a fun all-time quarterback duo for sure. I think there's kind of a similar maybe thing that could be there with both of those guys as well. Deshaun Watson. Is there any other Clemson guys? I don't know. I guess Darnold also. Darnold. Now we're talking Darnold. Hey, what are we even doing at this point? The running back, receiver, maybe defensive back, offensive line. I feel like quarterback may have been the one that was least likely to have the duo, but I just, you got to double check as well too. Peterson from Oklahoma. What do you got? Barry Sanders, Oklahoma State. So the Oklahoma State, maybe they even had some of these guys at the same time as well too, but I know they had Billy Sims, Barry Sanders, and I want to say Thurman Thomas all went to Oklahoma State. So that's up there as well too, chat. It might be that running back trio versus Julius Peppers and Lawrence Taylor. And maybe a trio is just straight up, you have to just respect a trio more than a duo of guys at that point. So again, we can double check the receivers here as well. But let's see, Oklahoma State all-time rushing yards. Yeah, Thurman Thomas is number 1. I guess Barry Sanders is number 5. Hey, yo. And, Ollie Gordon, chat? So I guess we got to see if Ollie Gordon has the NFL run. But, he was a fun college guy for sure. And Shua Hubbard as well. So Oklahoma State, low-key running back university. I don't know if we have to put Oklahoma State running backs on the board just going forward. Who's their running back right now, chat? Hey, yo, Trent Howland, Sesi Vahali, Rodney Fields. Looks like they got a couple options. I don't know. There's like some receivers in the mix here as well. But that is definitely, for sure, pretty highly rated. Do we go? Let's go USC and see the receivers, because I think this is going to be more modern as well. I think the same with LSU. Like, we could definitely be just leaving out some major LSU legends, so we'll definitely double check them real fast. But I think for the most part, yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster, is he in the mix? Oh, wasn't like Lynn Swan? Oh, yeah, Lynn Swan. Hey, yo. Lynn Swan was a USC receiver as well. So some of the older guys are going to mess this up, chat. Hey, yo, they're not going to be getting the stats to compete up there. Do we go All-Americans? Where's the All-American list here for USC? Obviously, this one's going to be crazy. And they also, I guess, have the running back list. So you got, hey, yo, OJ, Marcus Allen, and Reggie Bush. You know, from a college standpoint, and Mike Garrett won a Heisman as well, too. You've got 4 Heisman winners. I guess 5? Charles White's a running back? Let's double check that here, chat. And see, Charles White as well, too. So, Mike Garrett, OJ, Charles White, Marcus Allen, and Reggie Bush, all winning Heismans for USC. I think between Allen and OJ, hey, yo, like, they definitely were the most successful of the NFL guys between the two. But I don't think, I mean, OJ, you know, for what it is, chat. Like, OJ individually had one of the better seasons that of, if we were going OJ, Marcus Allen versus Lawrence Taylor and Julius Peppers, like, OJ's season might be the best season of all of them. But, of course, Taylor's sort of overall status. And Marcus Allen does have that Super Bowl win as well, too, to throw in the mix. And definitely, you know, Hall of Fame, don't underestimate his NFL career as well. Palomalu and Ronnie Lott? Whoa, chat. Defensive backs, that is crazy. I was going to say, I know they had Ronnie Lott, but I wasn't necessarily thinking Palomalu there off the top, just mentally earlier. So, you know, Adoree Jackson, good, you know, college year as well, too. But all-time NFL, that is definitely in the mix. You know, generationally, you could argue some of the best safeties. I guess you have Ed Reed in there. And, you know, Miami has maybe some of the, like we were saying when we were watching that Notre Dame-Miami game, they have some of the most stacked, just legendary rosters in general. But they do have it kind of nicely, you know, oriented throughout all the different spots of the roster. So, wasn't Clay Matthews also from USC? Clay Matthews and Ray Maluga? I guess I don't know if that quite counts. Maybe some offensive line tandems as well, too. So, yeah, I guess all-time USC, it would, maybe the college to NFL crossover, there'd be sort of a step up in the NFL. You know, not quite as many. I mean, you get Robert Woods, All-American, great NFL career, Marcus Lee. You know, I guess Keyshawn would have been the one, chat. If you go like Keyshawn and Lynn Swan as your duo. But then a lot of the receivers as well, too, from back in the day. Hey, yo, chat, we just lost the helmet. Oh, no. It is what it is. A lot of the receiver duos from back in the day were from some smaller schools as well. And like Walter Payton was from a smaller school. I don't think Florida has had the second running back. So you wouldn't have necessarily somebody to match with Emmitt Smith. I don't know if defensively. I guess here, wait, let's check Florida State. Because that's where Dion went. Hey, yo, sorry to the Florida fans just pivoting over to the rival. Hey, yo, it is what it is. But, you know, I don't know if Jalen Ramsey is like a good enough number 2. I mean, he's really great, chat. Hey, yo, shout out. But is there another defensive back to compete with Dion? You know, Dion versus Ronnie Lott is pretty close for the best defensive back of all time. There's definitely an argument to be had there. You know, a little bit different positions as well, too, can make it a little bit more equal. So, yeah, I guess unless somebody in the post-NFL really emerged here, I guess, do they have cornerback listed individually? Was Jalen Ramsey not an All... Oh, there he is, yeah. Jalen Ramsey, All-American, 2015. So, yeah, Ramsey and Dion would be the two. It's just going to be a little bit not enough for Dion to have the teammate to help him with the all-time. Because, you know, you could make a case, if you wanted to, just Dion as a defensive back, I guess, if you're taking him over Lawrence Taylor and Julius Peppers. But again, I guess Lawrence Taylor and Dion are going to be two of the guys in the conversation for the best defensive players. So I think Peppers over Ramsey in that case. And maybe modern day guys would be like, I don't know, is that close? And Ramsey at the peak of his powers was obviously pretty good. But Peppers, you get a sustained career as well, too. Again, his playoff impact is right up there. But I mean, so was Ramsey, you know. That team was definitely able to win a title with him and Donald as well. I don't know, does Donald as the Pitt offensive lineman have a case? Is there another guy? I can't really think of one. So I don't know if for the all-time like duo team chat, is it one school like, like if you have the duo, they get to pick a roster spot. So if it's like the all-time quarterback duo team, we get both Lamar and Unitas on this team, and we don't just get like, okay, Odell or shout out Odell. We don't just get like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase as our only receivers. Like that's our LSU side of the field is Jefferson and Chase, and we can kind of sub them out as we need it. But then we also have, again, the Pitt all-time team, I guess, is getting a little fun there. You got Fitzgerald for Pitt all-time and Donald on defensive line, but not obviously in the same unit, and I mean not at the same time as well too for Pitt. And then your all-time running back duo, we get, if we get two running back duos for two running back spots, we get OJ and Marcus Allen, and then Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas. And did we say Billy Sims as well too for Oklahoma State? I think we did. So we got to pay our respects to the legends. And like we're saying, like Notre Dame, Michigan offensive linemen. We're not going to look up Ohio State guys, chat. There's no need. They've had good receiver classes in the past couple of years, so I'm sure they're in the mix as well too. Alabama, again, some of it's the pro translation thing is the main part of it. Like Alabama running backs, you guess you do have like Derrick Henry winning a Heisman. I mean, just if you go newer guys as well too. If you would go like Trent Richardson for the college stuff, I guess we're probably forgetting, which other legendary running backs went to Alabama. But, Derrick Henry compared with whoever. I guess, does Christian McCaffrey have the second Stanford running back? Dickerson was SMU. And I guess we could have looked up the Oklahoma running back to maybe be in a duo with Peterson all time. But I honestly think that could really be it, chat. It could be Lawrence Taylor and Julius Peppers as the best just duo from a school in history. Where did Bruce Smith go to college? If we're talking all-time offensive linemen. Hey, yo, do we not have... I guess we have to go to the Wikipedia page here real quick and see. And I guess we've forgotten about Tenet, chat. Hey, yo, we've got the backstory of... Is it Sater? Am I saying his name right? Is he... He's the villain, but I don't know if I gave it the exact pronunciation. But we are getting his... And I guess I even forget what he found in the old Chernobyl situation back there. But, yeah, we got Bruce Smith going to... Virginia Tech as well. Bruce Smith, Michael Vick, the all-time Virginia Tech team is shaping up to be fun. We might just have to go through and track this ourselves. Because you do, again... You only need a couple of... if you have Julius Peppers and Lawrence Taylor, you're set. Again, you have the depth for a 17-game season. Blah, 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 blah. But if we're playing just AI all-time games, that's a pretty monstrous AI duo to be competing against there with Taylor and Peppers. But that was the most fun focus, I guess, for North Carolina after the first quarter. It's like, okay, we got to go back and look at the fun guys they've had. Because, we'll see who gets added to it from this team. But shout out to TCU again. TCU might be a top 25 team when it's all said and done. Maybe they're more like a top 35 team, but I think they're, again, in that range. I guess we'll see if North Carolina's in, top 35 range, or like we were saying, top 15 range, top 10. Are they, I guess top 10, they'd be a playoff team. So are they a playoff team this year? Probably not. It seems like it would be a little bit of a turnaround, but it's not like it went all bad. And again, I guess for something that we were saying, hey, yo, is that the takeaway, chat? But something that we were, I guess, saying earlier, I don't know if we completed the thought on it, but there was a weird sort of switch up from the beginning of the broadcast. And it's also who's, you got the panel at the beginning and the guys in the booth. But there was that whole, Belichick is here, it's the greatest coach of all time. And then once it started to go bad, you could see all the other pieces that they had prepared where it's like, here's the stories about how chaotic the recruiting process was and how chaotic the game planning was, and nobody knows what's going on, and the recruits were denied, and Belichick never shows up. It's like, okay, from what we've seen, it's like, I guess maybe we all are going to believe the other ones that are like, this maybe is going to be a little bit more chaotic than not. But also, again, if there was a moment where it flashed and there was plays that were working and Gio Lopez was hitting guys and it was clicking there for a second, maybe as they continue to smooth this out, maybe, again, is this the roster that's going to turn it around? Maybe there's a couple of building pieces. And I think, again, with Belichick, I don't know if it's just an age thing or just sort of how much of a, pause, but how much rope does he have? on that. I guess we have to ask, who can we ask, chat? But, you know, what kind of leeway does he have on North Carolina to build that roster? But, I don't, you know, what is just the season of timelines that you're willing to give him for opportunities there? So maybe he has, you know, a hypothetical 4 to 5 years. I guess, did he sign a 10-year deal or something like that? I forget exactly. But, you know, maybe he's got a hypothetical 4 years to try to turn this around. But there's a real possibility that it's like 2.5 years, maybe. And I don't know if, again, it's maybe just North Carolina parting ways, because I think Belichick commercially at this point is just good for North Carolina as well, too. Like saying, just if it's going to be, if he can get him to Mac Brown levels, but, you know, Deion Sanders level viewership type stuff. Like, I don't know if there's a good balance there that you can achieve, like we're saying, with Belichick. But it could just be Belichick is like, oh, yeah, I don't want to necessarily continue to just take the negativity of poor coaching performances from all these people, and I'm just going to get out early while, you know, before it gets even worse than it already has. And maybe he's like gone after a season and a half on his own accord. Who knows? But yeah, I guess that's the Belichick debut, chat. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to be locked in though. Hey, yo, Belichick is, they're definitely a mistress. Does Belichick want another mistress? Hey, yo, the REMINGTOM pod's going to be cheating on our Michigan team watching these North Carolina games. I guess it is what it is, chat. But again, they're not in the same conference, and who knows competitively if they're gonna, you know, if there's gonna be a North Carolina Michigan playoff game that we're gonna have. We're not gonna have conflicting feelings there, that's for sure. But let's take maybe a quick break, and we got still Tenet on in the background. Make no mistake. I guess we could do a quick update as well too on Djokovic versus Fritz. See how that game is going. But chat, still a fun night ahead here as we power through on the REMINGTOM pod. More to come. Pause right after this. Okay, chat, we are back. Tenet is still on in the background. John David Washington, once again, kidnapped a couple of times in this movie, chat. Captured. I don't know. It's a good thing his name is protagonist, because I don't know if he gets out, if that's not the case. Sador gets him on the boat here. Like we're saying, he gets in the test opera break-in. After that, of course, gets kidnapped in that setup as well, too. But like we were saying earlier, with just this in sort of the greater Nolan discography, I have been sort of, trying to come to terms with this just in the, like we're saying, the scale of his own movies. But I am starting to wonder if this is just on a personal rewatch. Again, I guess, like we said earlier, it's when we can get to this movie, put it on, like, Netflix. Just get this movie in the rotation a little bit more as well, too. But if we do have access to it, and I don't know, maybe it is sort of a limited access at this point movie, and there's just a newness to it where, again, the runtime for us watching it is a little bit less than some of these Nolan movies. Like Dark Knight's been out since 2008. At this point, we're just going to have more time to watch it. But the last couple of years, I have been finding myself wanting to go back to this Nolan movie a little bit more. And again, you just kind of find, you're like, okay, there's a certain tone that I like in a movie, like we're saying earlier, certain types of beats and set pieces that I'm going to be gravitating toward. And while The Dark Knight is definitely giving you all those, and make no mistake, I mean, if there's going to be a IP franchise person character situation that we're going to be watching on screen, I mean, like Batman, James Bond, like what's the short list of characters that we just like, okay, we're good to rewatch these characters as much as possible. But I do like the originality of this. I just love a time travel movie in general. And even if the time travel stuff doesn't necessarily make sense, guess what, chat? I'm in. And I know that maybe that's where this movie probably, I guess, the struggles the most is a little bit strong. Because I think in some ways, the fact that it's just them going backwards through time, there is a simplicity to that does make sense. And maybe it's them just kind of trying to over-explain it within the world that can kind of happen, that kind of makes it a little bit confusing, because this is, it's Nolan, there's a prestige, there is sort of a element of expertise, not to say that, other films are not trying to get there, but there is obviously a level of craftsmanship that he is working with in all certain movies that he's at least trying to approach these movies with, and a level of, okay, maybe everything in here has to make sense and has to be described and has to be connected, and that's great, and it builds out these worlds to a certain degree. But maybe for a movie like this, and maybe, like we were saying with is the Odyssey the too much dip on the chip movie, or is this from a story point, the too much dip on the chip movie as well? I guess the Odyssey maybe being a story that's already laid out for him is something that, in a way, can be helpful, because is that a book that he is translating? I guess, the Odyssey itself is a book, but is there a book about the Odyssey, or somebody, is he translating a different book other than just the Odyssey itself? But of course, Memento, original screenplay, Insomnia, as well too. Is he writing credit for Insomnia screenplay? Oh no, Hilary Seitz is the screenplay, and I guess this is a thriller film, police detective, a Norwegian thriller film. Okay, a Norwegian thriller film, chat. Hey, yo, we need to go back to this one a little bit then. A little bit more than, of course, you get the Batman movies, The Prestige, Inception. I mean, his originality. I guess it really is maybe him just going historical now, because Dunkirk is historical. I guess, it's not necessarily historical fiction, but it's sort of historical dramatization as well. So you've got 3 out of his last 4 in that type of lane. So I don't know if that is, again, maybe just him being in this recently is what's making us think about this. But like we're saying, the fact that those stories as well, too, there is something for him to work with. I mean, those movies critically, I think, have been received as well as any movies in the moment that he has had in the past in his career. Because like we're saying, you get to a point now, like, the certain name value, and we've said this with all the guys, like, they're, at some point, certain movies and certain films, just because they can be connected to certain people, creators, actors, it's like there's just will be a belovedness elements to it because again, it isn't. There's certain Denzel, a movie like Vampire in Brooklyn with Eddie Murphy is a movie that we can say is a good movie because we love Eddie Murphy and Angela Bassett and is it Keith David or is Witherspoon in that movie or Keith David? I guess we're gonna watch it again, chat. Hey yo, it is what it is. But maybe a certain like The Dark Knight Rises might not be a movie that everybody's not critically acclaimed, obviously, but Nolan fans and Batman fans, there's certain sub fan bases that are going to go back to that movie. But again, it becomes, I think it's more a beloved movie than there's not necessarily the anti Dark Knight people, Dark Knight Rises people for the movie crowd. I think it would be more like the sort of underground, hey, this movie's got good scenes, and this movie kind of hits the same sort of Tenet vibes of those sort of big fun action pieces can make it fun to sort of dip in and out of a background standpoint. And here we go, chat. We're up on the chase highway scene is what we're about to get to here. So again, we're about halfway through. We still got a couple of major checkpoint things to have happen. But again, I guess Nolan always kind of working in this time type stuff. Like there is sort of a definingness to the action set pieces, at least of this movie, and I think with what he did in The Dark Knight and Inception and then Interstellar, really again from a YouTube rewatchability, just the individual scene stuff. I think people always, I remember before, like people always talk about like the black hole scene from that movie. Hey, pause. Whoa, what movie are we talking about? Interstellar. But I think maybe the tidal wave scene is the scene that kind of has become the rewatchable YouTube scene. And from a sort of acting drama standpoint, the scene at the end with him in the bookshelf, of course, is also that kind of maybe go back to that and watch that scene as well too. But the sort of in a way the generation defining ability and just the uniqueness of his set pieces, like he is able to again like take these practical elements and sort of bend them in unique ways. Because I think this car chase scene, and maybe this is the second scene that sort of lives on from this movie. Because like I say, I kind of love the kitchen fight scene, and I do really like that infiltration scene as well. Is cool. And just a lot of the underrated beats in this movie. You know how it is, chat. We'll support the underrated beats for sure. But the defining ones, I think, even if this movie gets a little lost overall, or maybe not necessarily as talked about, just in Nolan, in sort of the bigger scape movies, 2020s, whatever, those scenes I do think are up there for action scenes, especially within the past 5 years here to start off the 2020s decade. Like you could make a case that those are pretty highly rated, because again, I think from just even a individual set piece standpoint, like some of the again Marvel stuff, some of the other franchise stuff just hasn't been quite the same. But I guess there is sort of a beats to these type of movies as well too, because he does have again sort of the opening heist-ish thing. It's definitely a heist in The Dark Knight, but this is a little bit more of a it's not a straight up heist for the opera scene in the same type of way. But again, you do get a bunch of great Batmobile chase scenes, and then obviously an iconic truck flip in the highway in The Dark Knight. And we're back on the highway, just like another iconic highway sort of convoy chase scene as well too. So there is sort of, I guess, a Nolan-esque beats for some of these. It's like Nolan might have like 2 or 3 types of movies that he makes, and he's just been able to mix it up like just enough to make it work. Because you've got I guess the following. I guess I've never seen The Following, chat. We're gonna have to watch The Following to complete the Nolan bingo card, I guess. But you've got sort of that Memento, Insomnia, Prestige. I guess Inception and Interstellar kind of go into the original screenplay mix. I would put Tenet more in the Batman Dark Knight Rises, Dark Knight tier of, maybe those 4 in a tier of like, kind of basic, not basic, but more just action movie-esque. And then, the historical movie is more like the third type of movie that he started to make as well, with Dunkirk, Oppenheimer, and now, the Odyssey being the third one in the mix there. So maybe him kind of adding this third movie in, like we're saying, is him continuing to push the stuff forward. So who knows, Chad? Hey, yo, Tenet, the last great original Nolan screenplay. Maybe people would say Interstellar for that. People might, would they say Inception for that? I don't know. Is this a hot take? Nolan hasn't had a good original screenplay since 2010. I don't think that we're making that hot take. But I guess the other reason that we would say that maybe we want to go back to this movie a little bit more than The Dark Knight as of late is because maybe I've said this before as well too, but I do kind of put movies into some different tiers where I have a tier of movies that's called like a fine wine tier where you don't necessarily, break those movies open and just watch those movies on every occasion. And maybe it is that, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, Tenet, not a fine wine, but also, some great prestigious movies aren't necessarily, they can be a little bit more of, do we call it like the Modelo, chat? I don't know what just the easy, just like the easy movie that you just can watch a bunch of times is. But you can also have a prestigious movie that I think is a little bit more watchable as well too. And it's not, of course, The Dark Knight isn't watchable, but sometimes a movie, again, this is a personal thing, like personally for me that The Dark Knight would be in this tier, but maybe personally this experience is not necessarily unique, but like a movie can be so good that I don't necessarily want to like wear off how good the movie is, ayo, if that makes sense. Like there is still a new, if you can just like space out how often you watch the movie, there can be somewhat of a newness that you can go into. And again, it's like at some point it's like, yeah, The Dark Knight just gets watched every year. It's like, the years move on, it piles up to where you just kind of know the movie even without watching it, of course. But even if you just to whatever kind of hit you can get on that movie, chat, it's like you just have to space out the watches for a movie like The Dark Knight. It's just too good. You just can't risk wearing out the replay value of that movie. So I guess, Tenet we can risk wearing out the replay value of, but again, it's held up to this point to where it's a movie that we're still able to throw back on and just keep rewatching time and time again. And maybe the confusing element, if it does help, chat, we just have to keep trying to figure it out over and over again. But maybe the sort of back and forth timeline element of it can help as well too, where you're just kind of looking up into the random moments and different parts of the movies, and maybe almost you can kind of experience the timeline of the movie in a different way if you're kind of dipping in and out in different moments. But for me, this is, again, The Dark Knight is, if we're talking best Nolan movies, I don't think it's really an argument. We kind of all agree it is The Dark Knight. If you want to talk to Oppenheimer, if you're going to make the Oppenheimer case now, then I guess, it's obviously got the award standpoint, but the runtime of that, I think alone cannot necessarily, the Dark Knight's just, again, a more watchable movie, and I think the quality of it does hold up, and the runtime of it is definitely more favorable. So if you're gonna just gravitate to a movie like Memento or Dunkirk, maybe Dunkirk is Sam's favorite Nolan movie, or favorite, or one he says is the best. Maybe he's also in the, I guess everybody's in the same boat, chat. The Dark Knight is just, it's so good. It is what it is. It's a defining movie of a generation for sure. But I mean, again, speaking of like what actually ends up being a magnum opus, Apex Mountain sort of ordeal, The Dark Knight is just going to be, in a good way, an unbeatable project. But in terms of replay value, like we're saying, I just go back to Tenet over and over again. It's sort of, and again, it's all personal like stuff. So I'm not saying that Tenet's a better movie, but for me personally, like I would say, like for Kendrick, I would re-listen to Untitled Unmastered more than To Pimp a Butterfly. But obviously, again, To Pimp a Butterfly is the better album. But it's like, hey, you know what? Check the stats. Like, the replay value, it is what it is. Like, I kind of gravitate toward this, maybe, again, a lesser version, whatever. But this just different sort of, for us, underrated version of the story in just what we want to, I guess, again, go back to time and time again in a different type of way. A movie like Inside Man's kind of crossing over into replay value movie, but it was definitely a fine wine movie for sure. Movies with, good dialogue stretches are definitely, I think that's maybe what it ends up being. So I don't know if The Dark Knight is, an A+ dialogue movie for sure, but it is a good, well-written movie for Nolan. I mean, Nolan's, again, always got well-written movies. Oppenheimer has got some good lines and some good sort of dialogue scenes for sure, but it is again, there's some good philosophical, like you kind of, there's some guys are talking, some good actor going toe to toe moments, and maybe like more so some character toe to toe moments than actor toe to toe. But there is some good Christian Bale, Harvey Dent, actor guys scenes. Michael Caine and Christian Bale have some scenes that are pretty good. But a movie like Heat's like so long that that half of that movie's fine wine and half of that movie's just like you just go back and replay it over and over again. But a movie like Inside Man, where you got the scenes with Denzel and Clive Owen, and there's just like dialogue back and forth, and these guys are just really, acting like crazy, like their acting is at a crazy level. Good. Then sometimes you don't necessarily want the hit of that to go away too much. So again, it's like, does Tenet not have the dialogue exposition scenes that are as captivating? I don't know if that's not what we're saying, but because it is a little bit maybe low, like a lot of the dialogue again in this movie kind of is exposition. I think Sador definitely has a lot of philosophical, here's where I'm coming from, here's a good, like, I'll explain here's like a good, like, just me being an actor type scene. Like, let me just, do a good page of script here, just like with some really good skill. But for the most part, again, this does rely on sort of the pacing, the tension, the sets, the fact that they're in time, the fact that they're just kind of figuring out what's going on and having to navigate everything. And the amount of globetrotting that he does in this movie is kind of cool as well too, because you do get a little bit of that to some degree in the Batman series for sure. Again, like Memento is a little bit of a more condensed story. Obviously Dunkirk set to a specific time. Oppenheimer, I don't know if you can necessarily consider that globetrotting, because I think that bounces back more and forth between, again, like the political drama, and there is some like countdown type, you have to get the bomb built in time, type storylines going on as well too there. But it doesn't necessarily have the same sort of multiple locations, extravagant, landscapes type ordeals that you get here. And again, Interstellar is just a whole different thing with the fact that it's set in space. It's just the different thing. And Inception is more different because they have to kind of they have to define it a little bit more. It's, there's obviously a snow scene with the weather, and it is more weather based. You get snow and rain and some of those different elements. But here you've got, again, the big vaults. We get a yacht. Like, I don't know if we ever have another, do we have any other Nolan yacht scenes? I guess we'll have to, Dunkirk, we get some boat scenes there. But the Odyssey, like, we're definitely going to be getting some, of course, boat scenes in that. And I know everybody has to read the Odyssey in school, but who knows what actually happens in that story. Like, he does, I think, kind of just travel around on a boat. So I don't know if that could be considered a yacht, but we do get a yacht situation as well in this. So him having the massive scale is pretty fun. Because again, for the Dark Knight, like, you're going back, he goes out to the place to train in the first one with Ra's al Ghul. So he spans the globe there, but he's kind of in the back alleys of the globe, and kind of, he's at the monastery and kind of hidden away in getting the training done. And then does go to get Lau in the Dark Knight, and then is back in sort of a hidden vault spot in the Dark Knight Rises before most of the rest of the movie is just, set in Gotham in between the rest of the time. And then, like we're saying with what we said about the rest of the movies. So, and John David Washington as well too. I don't think we can underestimate, like we were saying, I think what kind of performance this can be, and what kind of performance this is for his career, like we're saying, from that rewatchability standpoint as well too. Because I think even while maybe this didn't have the in the moment value, I do think this is going to be it's a project that you have to say is a win to me in his IMDb looking back. There's no way you're going to look back and be like, yeah, Tenet, that's a bad movie, that's a miss. Like, that's again, we can debate the in the moment stuff. I think it's even still, like, it even still made money during COVID, again, on a $205 million, like, for a movie of this story, it's just bound to be expensive. And then for it to hit at the time that it did, obviously that's just unfortunate timing, bad luck. There's nothing you can really do about that. And then for, I think, still to look at that number and say there's some positive stuff going on there is definitely a win at the end of the day. So I guess you do have the awards performance with Black Klansman as well too for our guy John David. I know maybe the 2020s haven't, and he hasn't necessarily taken a ton of roles, haven't carried that type of momentum that he would have had going into the decade. Because again, I think he can do a little bit of a different thing than Michael B. or some other guys that might be competing for roles than him. I don't know, is he being edged out by certain guys at this point? But I think kind of the regalness that he can play an action star of, again, in that Denzel type of way, is something that was in a way a one-on-one in a Denzel thing that he was bringing to the table. And then I don't know if anybody has been able to capture it since him. And if John David can provide that type of status on screen, I think that it just hasn't quite been used in the same type of way. Because you think even in Amsterdam, I guess that's more of an ensemble. And, you know, David O. Russell, that's definitely, I think, a guy that a lot of people respect and want to work with. So you understand him taking that role in that movie there. And The Creator, I think, is another one that goes, like, I don't know if you can look back at The Creator and be like, that's a bad movie. I think that this was definitely, you know, a little bit of a low-key release as well. Made 104 on 80 million. Again, he's making popular. I think this is a little bit, this kind of feels like Denzel after he had the rise and after he won the Oscars in the 90s, and then he moves into that mid-2000s. He has like that deja vu Man on Fire back-to-back run. I don't know if those movies were exactly back-to-back, but again, him and Tony Scott, those were the two movies that they made back-to-back in the 2000s there. So those movies, I guess we could go, I feel like they were, you know, kind of successful at the box office in that same type of way. Obviously didn't have the critical acclaim, but had the good creators and the good pieces around him are now like insanely watchable. And like, I mean this like in all respect, like The Creator is like a perfect Tubi movie in like a couple of years. Like the free on YouTube for The Creator chat, like we're looking forward to it. I guess I don't know if it's attached to a streaming service already in a type of way. You got Ken Watanabe, so you got him working with people in the Nolan universe as well too. Oh, Gareth Edwards is the director for this. So yeah, that's another guy who is really good at, I think, these genre action movies. I think Godzilla's definitely like a TNT staple. Speaking of TNT, Rogue One, I mean, the Star Wars people, you know, this is the best movie of all time to them. Jurassic World Rebirth, I think people really liked it this year. I don't know if it's going to be the same sort of, you know, genre beloved film, but I think for the Jurassic Park fans and the people of the franchise, I think it definitely holds up and keeps that lineage going really well. And did get the nominations for some of the effects, and you do have a Hans Zimmer scoring as well too. So the fact that there's just even some credibility, you know, not saying that you're like, oh, it barely got credibility, but again, from the Oscar standpoint, like the fact that there is that attached to it as well too, I think is going to make this sort of that sleeper movie to revisit back in the day, where it's like, oh, wait a second, what's this movie that got nominated for editing? Like, you know, obviously all those people that go through the best editing Oscars to look for movie recommendations, but again, there is a way to carry on the prestige of the movie as well. So, you know, you see him taking a little bit more of a actor role in the piano lesson as well. And another ensemble cast type movie. The Creator is more like, you know, that's maybe I don't know if Denzel would have taken maybe, The Creator, again, maybe quality wise, it's in that Man on Fire deja vu tier. I think actual role wise, it does feel a little more like Bookie Eli for Denzel. So maybe it feels a little more to, you know, 2010s Denzel in terms of the type of vibe. But again, in terms of the overall quality of the movie, I think it's a little more 2000s Denzel, if that makes sense. But again, I think there is a uniqueness that he can bring as an actor that hasn't quite been capitalized in the same way. So I don't know if he's moving into a producer thing or what's going on. I know we talk about this every time. Like, where is John David Washington in movies these days? But he is definitely a guy that I think there's still even that, you know, he hasn't been nominated yet. So I wouldn't, or I guess for the Oscars specifically. Did he get nominated at the Oscars for Klansman, or was that just Golden Globes? Let's see here if it says quickly. It didn't say. Their Screen Guild. So he got nominated at Golden Globes for Black Klansman, but not the actual Academy. But I guess NAACP as well too in 2025. So he's been nominated in every year, just to varying degrees. Saturn Awards I think is pretty fun. I guess that's more sci-fi related. Critics' Choice. I mean, that's obviously first ever Critics' Choice. That's obviously Best Actor in an Action Movie. Tenet. I mean, chat, lock it in. Hey, I'm surprised he didn't win. And People's Choice. And NAACP for Ballers as well too. Screen Actors Guild, Golden Globes, People's Choice again. IMDb Star Meter Award for Breakout Star in 2018. I mean, that's right up at the front of the bookshelf. You have to imagine. But there is definitely Michael B. Jordan Sinners type rise in person. I guess maybe for MBJ it was a little bit more of that steady rise though, because again he did have that run as sort of the side guy, the villain, secondary character in a way in the Black Panther movie, and then had the main run in the sort of the beloved franchise that definitely got mainstream popular, but was kind of like that. I'm not saying B plus obviously in a bad way, but didn't quite break into the. It did get the critical acclaim. It was just out of the Oscar stuff. I guess he got like Stallone got the role, and maybe it was more him in a prestigious movie, but not quite having the. But he's really good in that movie, so I can't necessarily say that. I'm just trying to necessarily think about like why that movie wouldn't have been. Obviously it's just maybe the newness of those guys as well too, keeping it from the Oscars. I don't know, but again, his rise was just a little bit more of a kind of a straight arrow up, and then he, obviously ascended extra as well too. Pause with the performance in Sinners, but I think there is that A+ movie where not just even the actor role as well, because I think he could get nominated. Like Black Klansman, I guess, is sort of a, under the radar actor role that he was able to do and get nominated for and get acclaim for. But I think there is sort of that he leads a blockbuster movie and is really good in it, and maybe can help kind of push it over into a prestigious type of way. Because again, he does work with these really good creators as well too. I imagine that signing up for that Edwards project, and I watched the trailers for that. I imagine reading the script. It sounds interesting. The effects obviously were really cool, and they were able to make all that stuff really work, getting awards nominations for it. So you can see the choices that he's making, and like even if the hit rate of a guy like Russell is maybe it's like, okay, is this the project that's gonna hit? Who knows? But you still makes sense for a guy to want to take a project and work with him in that type of way. But to go with the Nolan side of things as well too, this is an interesting time for Nolan in his career, because like we're saying, I guess he's obviously started to pivot into the historical drama type stuff, because he's done Dunkirk the year before this, then Oppenheimer after this, and now he's doing the Odyssey. But he also starts to assemble his new / current team of guys as well, because when he starts his rise, he of course in this, like we're saying, in all these movies in the 2000s, I guess Memento was 2000, so he doesn't really have any 90s movies, but in sort of the mid 2000s, he's working with Hans Zimmer and Roger Deakins, and he's got his supporting cast as well too. So you've got Murphy is supporting in a Nolan movie, even going back to Batman Begins in 2005, and then I guess 20 years later, almost, in Oppenheimer, is a lead and now getting an award buzz for it. So wait, I guess John David's not a side character in this movie. Who's the side character that's gonna get 20 years later their shine? Is it the who's the other actress in this movie, chat? Elizabeth Debicki? Is that how you say the name? Is she the one? Yeah, I think maybe she gets like maybe hopefully not 20 years from now, but she would be maybe the one that like who is still in the mix, because again, John David's the lead, so he's supporting. He's not eligible for that category. Cillian Murphy was supporting in Batman Begins as the Scarecrow, and then reappeared as well too later on in both of the movies in cameo roles. But he starts to pivot his career, so we're getting the Nolan old school sort of story, high concept action story in a way in this sort of new phase of Nolan's career. But like we're saying, he's assembling this new guy, so you're getting this movie with the look that he's starting to assemble now. And maybe that's another reason why I do like this movie, because this might be another, and this might be the hottest take of the movie. I guess, maybe saying that, we personally would go to a one movie over the other is never going to be a hot take. That's just personal taste. And I guess maybe this is another personal taste thing, but maybe if we were to make it a hot take, I think that and I don't know if I'm not going to say the names right. The Hoyt von Hoytma, is that the cinematographer that he's working with now? I think the Hoyt Ludwig combo, Hoyt von Hoytma is the cinematographer on Tenet, and then the cinematographer on Oppenheimer as well too. And then Ludwig, of course, scored Tenet. I guess not, of course, but he scored Oppenheimer. He also scores Tenet, and he's to the point where he is kind of the new Hans Zimmer, the new, I guess, top guy score-wise, and he might just be working with everybody at this point. He also scores Sinners with Coogler. Why would Coogler not want to continue to work with Ludwig going forward as well, too? And did Ludwig score Creed as well? So maybe he's worked with both of those guys in the past. Oh, he even scored Fruitvale Station. Yeah, so he's been with the Coogler ever since the beginning as well, too. But yeah, is also going to continue to work with Nolan on the Odyssey as well. So did Zimmer score Dunkirk in 2017 before this? And then Tenet is the first time that he worked. Maybe Hoytma directed it, but Zimmer does the music. So he starts his change with the cinematographer. But Deakins is the one that is on. Oh no, Hoytma is on Interstellar. Okay, that does make sense. The look of that. There is the Tenet color palette stuff. There is definitely some overlap there as well. So is Hoytma on Dark Knight Rises as well too? Or is, Wally Pfeiffer? Pfizer? Who's this guy, chat? Hey, yo. Walter Pfizer is the cinematographer on Dark Knight Rises. So I guess he worked with Deakins just earlier on there then. As well. Oh, wait, is Deakins not do the Dark Knight? Hey, yo. Chad, he had to have been involved in some way, because I thought Deakins was involved in every great movie ever. So, shout out Walter Pfizer, whatever his name is. Wait, where's Roger Deakins? How do you spell this guy? Oh, Robert Deakins? Why did I type in Robert Deakins? Who's Robert Deakins? Roger Deakins. What's the filmography? I guess if he's not listed there, then it's probably not going to be listed here. I mean, I guess Skyfall? Are we confusing James Bond and Batman, chat? Hey, yo, we might be. Blade Runner 2049? I mean, how do you do Skyfall, Blade Runner 2049, and not The Dark Knight and Interstellar? Hey, yo. Seemed like it would be right in the mix. So I feel like he would have had to have worked on that. I don't know. Working with Villeneuve. Oh, Deakins is with Villeneuve. That's right. But I guess regardless, the point is, so Roger Deakins, I guess, gets to avoid being on the wrong end of this hot take. But maybe it's more of a Hans Zimmer. Is it a Ludwig over Hans Zimmer hot take? Is that what it is? But maybe personally, maybe it would be I guess just a different hot take all time. Hoytma over Deakins. I guess we can't necessarily say that all time, because Deakins obviously has the legacy. But just the look of Hoytma's movies, chat. I mean, I love the way that Tenet looks, and the score of this movie is really good as well too. So there's like a IMDb thing on the app now where it shows you based on the reviews, like what is consistently reviewed good and bad in this movie. And it's got like, this is sort of a green attribute of the movie. This is a negative attribute of the movie. This is a kind of a narrative, or I guess this is what narrative complexity is, sort of a kind of a neutral thing in this. So it's got, cinematography marked as a positive, but it's got sound design in this one marked as a negative. Confusing marked as a negative. Character development marked as a negative. But rewatchable marked as a positive. Technical achievement marked as a positive. Performance marked as a positive. Ambitious marked as a positive. Maybe that could have been marked as a negative. And cinematography marked as a positive as well too. With action sequences, honestly, if there was a mix of negatives and positives that we'd be okay with in a movie, this is it. Action sequences, cinematography, and technical achievement over character development and narrative complexity. Hey, yo, chat. Every day of the week. Give me that. This person says wasted potential. Oh, chat. They still gave it a 7 out of 10. This movie rewards you for seeing it again. Yes, chat. It's so confusing. You discover something every time you rewatch it. But I think this is the best. This is the duo for or the I guess the trio. This is the number one Nolan trio right here. Nolan as the director, Ludwig on the score, and then Hoytma on the cinematography. And again, I think Interstellar is one as well too that obviously a lot of the Nolan people, everybody, and non-Nolan people love that movie as well. But the look of that movie is up there with the best. But again, Zimmer is, if not the best, in the conversation for the best score guy of all time. And he's just done so many movies at this point that you still have to give him that all-time status. But Ludwig is making the charge, chat. And again, he does go back with Coogler now quite a bit. So, he to work with multiple great directors, where they're just like a movie quality thing where, not only are his scores going to be great, but the movies that the scores are involved in are also just these awesome movies as well too. But again, there is just a modern sort of, he can infuse the trap stuff, but with the old school cinematic stuff in a really fun way. And then, like we're saying, even in Sinners, get back into the, the fact that Coogler had Ludwig score Sinners, I think shows you how good Ludwig is at scoring, where he's just like, we just need the score on this to be awesome. Like, we're not, and I know, I'm not even trying to make a statement or anything, but I was like, there's a world where maybe he goes a little bit more in a certain direction with the person making the score as well too, to really try to make sure that it is, foundationally in the right way for the movie. But also it's just like, Ludwig is going to capture the sound and make it really good. So it's just like, Ludwig's got to make this score. Hey, yo, chat. It is what it is. But again, for the action movie stuff as well too. And like we're saying, Coogler obviously with like Black Panther stuff, Ludwig, just all the scores on that. And, the fact that, just goes to show why Black Panther is one of the greatest movies of all time. The fact that you have Kendrick on the music side of the, I guess both music, but like the song side of the album, and then Ludwig on the score side of the album. It's just, it might be the greatest 1-2 for that in movies. And I know Nolan doesn't really use like actual, do you think, does Nolan use songs in his movies? Maybe he does in Memento. Are they like listening to some songs on the radio or something in that? But they don't ever listen to, there's no music in the Nolan world, Chad. Ayo, just score. Just Ludwig and Hans Zimmer is the only music that exists. But again, I think this is the, and now that he's also won the Oscar with this duo, or with this group, like in terms of the success for a Nolan movie, again, critically, the most success that he has had is with this group. So maybe that is part of the reason that we kind of think that as well too. But again, Hoytma and Ludwig are not involved in the story of this movie. So if we're just talking about the score of this movie, I think this might be the best. The only other score that is not the only other, but for us, if we're going to rank the scores, the one that we might compete for the top might be Oppenheimer. And again, that's also Ludwig. So he's done a couple here, but the Dark Knight's got great music. Inception, or so like it's Hans Zimmer as well too. So it's all great music, but Ludwig is cooking, chat, when he is working for Nolan. And just the sort of way that Hoyt, am I saying his name right, chat? Hey, yo. The way that our guy is able to capture kind of the scale of these Nolan movies is, I think, perfect for what Nolan is trying to tell from a story, what Nolan is trying to show from a storytelling standpoint in these movies. Because again, our guy Wally earlier on, they're so beautifully shot that we thought Roger Deakins, was involved. And there is some, silhouette, color palette things. I don't know, is that guy like a Roger Deakins disciple? Do you need to do more research and see? Maybe Roger Deakins was in the room. Who knows? Roger Deakins, chat. Ayo, shout out. There was definitely a call to Deakins at some point. Like, how do I frame this shot? And he's like, silhouette, do this thing. But like the scene where like Batman is, of course, standing on the rubble of the wreckage in that one point, it's like silhouette Batman. There's like kind of a sky, post-fire, orangey blue thing going on in the background. It's like, this got Deakins written all over it, chat. Again, this could be, you could put this scene next to any Skyfall Blade Runner silhouette shot. And it's like, it's perfect. But the way, like, you don't really get sort of that contrast, which I do, again, really love. Like, Blade Runner is, 24/9 in both of the Blade Runners, but those type of movies, Sicario, those are as, Skyfall, like, do we need to keep going? Those are as good of a looking movie as you're going to get, just in general. Action movie aside, the color palette, tone, again, the use of the silhouettes and the different stuff is as good as you're going to get in any type of movie. But the way that he's able to sort of go to scale at times and portray some of the action stuff, to me, is really great as well too. Because like I was saying, maybe some of the most fun action stuff is when Hoytma is directing. Because I don't know who necessarily would have done cinematography on Memento. I think, it is Wally. I was gonna say that movie is definitely a little bit more, and it's really cool. Some of the shots and some of the it's not quite Tony Scott-esque with some of the movement in the filmmaking, but there is a little kind of Tony Scott, just a smidge of it, I think, a pause in there, but that there is a little more intimate vibes, in kind of the shooting of that movie. And I think there is sort of an off balance, confusing thing that they want to do with the storytelling of that as well too. In chat, we've got I guess, do we know at this, I don't even remember, do we know at this point, I guess spoiler alert if you haven't seen Tenet, but we've got John David fighting the soldier in the art gallery, both of them going different ways in the timeline, and as John David Washington's about to pull the trigger and blow this guy's brains out, Pattinson has to step in and save the day, which again, speaking of the performances, like, Pattinson gives as good of a performance in this movie as any of the other actors. And again, for Pattinson, we see him not play in the Nolan verse after this because Nolan doesn't direct the Batman movie that Pattinson is in. But Matt Reeves, it being a Batman movie post The Dark Knight, there is going to be some similarities there, even though he is able to set his Batman apart in a distinct way that, again, makes it unique and a fun, rewatchable movie. But for Pattinson's IMDb as well too, again, you could see John David having a career where he's making an action movie like this every 3 or 4 movies, and that becomes a staple of the type of movie that he does. But Pattinson is a little bit more of, again, that indie actor, and he did the franchise movie with Batman, got the notoriety, got the paycheck, whatever, the franchise lockdown of that type of thing. He can go back into the second Batman now and have some certainty, again, with a career type of thing there. But he does go for a little bit more of a different type of concept, A24 type thing for his other type of movies. And he's really good at that. And he's maybe a little bit more in the Cillian Murphy lane of the actor that Nolan works with. Again, maybe John David is a unique type of actor. Maybe Nolan doesn't work with a, typical action star in that type of way. Because I guess Bale would be maybe one, but Bale's a guy that, is known for sort of his diversity in roles as well too. But there we go. Now we know that he is the soldier. So I guess I'm just lost in the timeline at this point. I guess now that he's going backwards through time, I think we already knew that he was the guy that John David was fighting in the suit at that point. So, yeah, but again, for Batman, it's a really fun portrayal of Bruce Wayne as sort of that, the traumatized, gothic, darker vibes that he's going for, but the sort of not, normal energy, but again, he's playing a normal person in this movie to some degree. A normal person that is, consistently in a time loop trying to help out this protagonist guy. But the actual personality of this character, again, a grounded sort of real person, and Pattinson is just kind of a charming friend throughout the course of this movie. And maybe sort of the best, most normal role that Pattinson has played, because even a role like Good Time as well too, there is a intensity and a franticness to that movie, and the thriller sort of just craziness vibes of that. Again, that's like a real, character type person, but there isn't sort of the same charming, collected charisma element that he is providing here as well. And have we even gotten to Aaron Taylor Johnson in this movie yet? Is he in this movie? Is that a different movie that I'm thinking of? Hey, yo, Chad, he leads a mission in this movie, right? Do we have to go back to the cast of this movie and make sure I'm not crazy? Or is that just him swooping in later in the story? Doesn't he lead a mission in this one? Hey, yo. Or does it just show you how long it's been since we've been revisited? Oh, no, he is Ives. Okay, so we've been either rambling through the scenes that he is in, or he just pops up way later in this movie than we thought. But yeah, here, let's look up Pattinson real quick and see what he's done recently. Obviously, Mickey 17 this past year as well, too. But again, he's kind of a weird guy in that one. The Boy and the Heron, an Japanese animated fantasy film. The Devil All the Time, American Southern. Is this with, is Holland in this? Yeah, so that's definitely Holland on the poster. So this did look like a fun movie. I had to go back and revisit the trailer for this movie. Yeah, this was a Netflix release. So this one was a stacked cast. Again, Pattinson playing this was kind of on the Pattinson emerging as I think, did he get cast as the Batman at this time? So he might have gotten cast as the Batman and then was in Tenet and The Devil All the Time in 2020. So that was when he started to break out, of course. But The King, maybe The King is also kind of another cool movie role as well, too. But maybe we need to revisit that one. I feel like we've only seen scenes of that movie instead of maybe the whole thing. But, The Lighthouse, obviously a little more of a artsy movie. Lost City of Z is pretty fun. Our guy Hunnam is the main character in that. And, of course, you got the Twilight Saga back in the day as well, too. Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter. Ayo. I think R.I.P. in that one. I was going to say, wait a second, he returns, but is Twilight Harry Potter continued or not? Ayo. Twilight is... Oh, wait, isn't Twilight like 50 Shades? Or is 50 Shades Twilight fanfic? There's some weird connection. Twilight's like fanfic of something. Some type of fan fiction of some franchise. It might be. I think it's Harry Potter. We got Hermione, starts dating vampires instead of wizards, is basically the plot of Twilight. I'm pretty sure. Check ChatGPT and see if that is not right. But, yeah, I guess he's also in the Odyssey as well, too. And Dune Part 3. So he's getting back into the franchises in the main roles. Hey, yo, chat. You love to see it. Mickey 17 is, fun art. I guess Bong Joon-ho was on that as well, too. So he continues to work with high directors. Who is working on Die My Love? Lynn Ramsey? Maybe not a name that we're super familiar with. A Argentinian novel adaptation? I guess maybe not a book that we have on the bookshelf as of right now. But yeah, this is up there with, and I guess, again, screen time, the amount, because he's in this quite a bit next to John David as well. Elizabeth Debicki, we'll have to recall what she is in here. Oh, Guardians 2? Ayo, Cloverfield? So maybe some of the more scarier movies she's kind of, I guess not Guardians, but is Cloverfield kind of a scary movie? I guess, she hasn't really worked a ton since then. I don't know if we look into that, but Tenet in 2020, just in general, 4 movies in 2018, and then The Burnt Orange Heresy in 2019, Tenet in 2020, Peter Rabbit 2 in 2021, so just a voice role in 2021. Then Guardians 3, she's back, but I don't know if she's in that. And she's like on, I guess everybody's kind of, covered up in that movie, so it's hard to tell sometimes who's who. But that, I feel like, role is not a crazy role as well, too. And then she's in that Maxine franchise. I guess that X franchise. Shout out. So that's kind of a fun, horror, trendy, beloved franchise in that genre. But I haven't seen that, and she's not in the whole thing, so I don't know what her role in this franchise is, if she's a main player. So kind of underrated the last couple of years, because she's really good in this movie as well, too. She has probably the most emotional performances she has to give. And, shout out, she's really got to, carry it for the lady actors as well, too, because there's not a, ton in this movie. I don't know if that's always been a strength of Nolan's characters. And I guess, we'd have to actually, we can't sit here and necessarily talk about, if she's like that great of a character, not because we're not necessarily, approaching it from that. Well, I guess we are approaching it from obviously a sensitive mindset, but obviously we need a lady to tell us exactly the perfectness of the portrayal of or I guess the beats of the character. But again, the acting performance itself and the portrayal is great. Because again, we can't necessarily judge like does Nolan, is he crafting these lady characters with obviously the greatest care all the time. But she's got a tough story. She's a little, it's a little kind of Fincher-esque, the dynamic she has with her and the villain. Like, I feel like, Nolan doesn't really get that kind of adultish in a way. Again, like even kind of the Joker stuff is a little like he doesn't really get too crazy. There's not like any like crazy stuff with like him and Rachel or anything like that. It's just kind of all talk, him wandering around. Like again, and he doesn't really necessarily go like, Nolan doesn't go girl in the dragon tattoo levels here with some of the on-screen stuff with her and Sador. But again, there is like obviously a vibe, and we know what's going on, and just the feeling of those scenes has that type of feeling for the general thing as well. And you do have the one other Tenet arms dealer person that he does deal with as well too. But again, she's really more of an exposition, kind of sends him off into certain roles. Doesn't really do a ton in terms of character work, character development in the movie. So to be honest, just in terms of the Nolan universe as well too, again, he might not be writing these characters to the strongest effect, but it doesn't mean that the actors themselves aren't able to give still legit performances. And she has given one of the best performances for actors like that in her in just the Nolan discography as well too. I forget the name of Carrie Ann Moss is in Memento. So I mean, of course she's awesome in Memento. And I think Maggie Gyllenhaal is really good in The Dark Knight. I think Maggie Gyllenhaal is better in The Dark Knight. I don't know if this is a hot take than Katie Holmes in Batman Begins. I think they're both pretty good performances in the movies. I don't know if they're necessarily like, we look back and like talk about those performances, but I think again they're really pretty good acted. Inception, I guess you do have who is the chick from The Dark Knight Rises as well too is the wife character to Leo in this movie, and I'm blanking on her name at this point. Marion Cotillard is her last name. I don't know if I'm saying her last name right, but again, I think her acting is a little bit there's definitely some conversation about that in The Dark Knight Rises, and she's pretty good in Inception, but she's not doing a ton in that movie. And again, I don't know if Nolan is giving her a lot to work with as well. You have Hathaway in Interstellar and in The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, speaking of the Dark, I guess Hathaway does steal the show in Dark Knight Rises, but I don't know if we're, shouting out the acting. So it's really the Emily Blunt performance in Oppenheimer that is kind of the competition as well. Carrie Ann Moss in Memento, or Emily Blunt in Oppenheimer, or Elizabeth Debicki in Tenet are basically your best performances in that aspect, I think, from the Nolan universe. But again, she's really doing a great job. And, a longer movie as well. Obviously, Oppenheimer's probably the longest Nolan movie for sure, but unless the Odyssey gets there. But Emily Blunt compared to Elizabeth Debicki's runtime in the different movies. Again, she's just a little bit more of an important character, a central character to the film compared to, the Oppenheimer wife character. I forget her first name. Is it like Kitty Oppenheimer or something like that? Here, let me double check what we had going on. J. Robert is the Cillian Murphy first name, and then Emily Blunt. Yeah, it was Kitty Oppenheimer. Hey, yo, chat. So shout out. Well, we did remember as well too. And make no mistake, we had no idea. We would not remember Florence Pugh's name from that movie. That was not gonna happen. But Jean Tatlock, I guess, is the person in that. So hey, yo, chat. Little AI Jean Tatlock Oppenheimer scene. I don't know, but Yeah. Oh, I forgot we did have. Kenneth Branagh is, of course, a guy that has worked with Nolan a bunch as well too. But this is again for Kenneth Branagh in the 2010s, just the 21st century. I think this might be kind of a major role for him as well too. Like I guess he hasn't even acted a ton as well. He's been a little bit more selective. Oh, I forgot he was in the original Thor. That's right. Murder on the Orient Express, Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit with Chris Pine. Ayo, shout out. Cinderella in 2015. All Is True. Artemis Fowl on Disney Plus. Belfast. I guess he did, write and directed Belfast. So that was kind of his, I guess, big return in this way. Death on the Nile. Did he also direct that? Screenplay from Michael Green. So he just decided to get back into directing again. As well, I guess he directed Artemis Fowl. Wait, so he directed All Is True? So I guess he moved into directing. Ayo. Co-directed by Kenneth Branagh. So did he direct? He directed Cinderella as well too? Ayo, is this his directed filmography? Oh, this is directed filmography. Okay, that makes sense. Ayo, shout out. Does he cast himself in these movies as well too? Kenneth Branagh, is he in Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit? This one's been sitting on Tubi or maybe Pluto, one of those two. It's been like, do I want to watch Chris Pine as Jack Ryan? I don't know, but maybe if Kenneth Branagh's in it, who knows? He is, of course, I think, is he in Belfast? I think he maybe appears in which, I don't know, but maybe it's about his most personal film. Maybe it's like about Brandon. I don't know, he's obviously, again, directed, obviously majorly connected to that film. But I guess in terms of an acting role, let's see if we can actually find acting roles for our guy Branagh to confirm what he's done as of late. Chariots of Fire, the debut, uncredited, I guess. Cambridge student, uncredited Cambridge student in Chariots of Fire, 1981. So do we have to fire that movie up and see if we can see where Branagh is in that? What is he in? Asgardian Distress Caller, Infinity War, voice uncredited. What is he in Thor? Again, I forget right now what he is in Thor. Oh, wait, did he direct Thor? He's not in Thor. He directed Thor? Hey, yo. So, yeah, he is in Jack Ryan. And then Mindhorn in 2016. Dunkirk, Murder on the Orient Express, All Is True. Tenet, Fireheart, Death in the Nile, which I think is a fun movie. That might be like a streaming kind of rewatchable movie. And, again, he's in that as well, too. Oppenheimer, obviously, kind of a mega event for everybody in it. A Haunting in Venice, a film, his next directed movie. And then King of Kings. Oh, the animated movie. Okay, so wait, he's voices that? Wait, is he voice the main guy, chat? Hey, yo, who do we got? Kenneth Branagh. Oh, he's Charles Dickens. Hey, yo, in King of Kings. So he's in Devil Wears Prada 2 and the Thomas Crown Affair. So he's definitely getting back into the movies in a major way, chat. Ayo, so maybe Tenet was like the start and Nolan got him back into sort of the limelight in the way. Because again, he is pretty terrifying in this movie. And one of those, we always talk about the villain roles that make you worried about the person. This is a borderline makes you worried about Branagh. And again, I feel like Nolan, there's been a little bit of a detachment from reality from his villains, or the way they kind of approach the villain in a movie like Interstellar, or Inception, where you're never terrified of the billionaire. Like if you had to cross paths with the billionaire or I guess I don't remember the wealth level of the guy in Inception, but if you had to cross levels with the old man in Inception, obviously I don't think you'd be too scared. One, he's an old man as well too, but just he wasn't like a violent evil type guy. I think maybe he was more like shrewd business. We'd have to go back and see, but I think he was more like shrewd businessman, would just kind of take out the competition versus actually, sadistically violent. But Kenneth Branagh, it's like, oh man, this guy's really disgusting. But, the acting level in that is pretty great. And then in Oppenheimer as well too, I think he's really good at that. So you get him in two major Nolan movies in the 2020s, and then Devil Wears Prada 2 and the Thomas Crown Affair the third time could be a decent run for him as well. Thomas Crown Affair for 2027. And then Mayday, upcoming American action adventure film written and directed by John Goldstein and John Francis Daly, produced by Apple Original Films, Skydance Media. It stars Ryan Reynolds, Kenneth Branagh, Marcin Dernasinski, Maria Bakalova. So, I mean, got a decent cast here for sure. I don't know. When flying a mission over Soviet Russia, an American soldier is forced to crash land his plane in a Russian wilderness in hope to survive. So Ryan Reynolds is a soldier going to be on the run from Kenneth Branagh. Is basically the plot of the movie. So is he basically like a villain now? Is he the villain in Devil Wears Prada 2? I guess. Wait a second. So what's the plot of Devil Wears Prada 2? He's in charge of the fashion line now. Maybe he's like going after Meryl Streep's character in that one. I don't know. But yeah, of course, again, terrifying. I know the Joker is the most terrifying / the most best performance that a guy has given in a Nolan movie. But I do think that just in terms of villain level, just disgusting villains. And again, not to say like Branagh's disgusting, obviously, but just the villain that he's playing in the movie is not a great character, not a great person. Great character work, but not a great person. And if he was a real life guy, obviously, but in terms of that, like, because again, the Joker is cool. Unfortunately, the Joker is cool. I know he commits bad crimes, but there is, he's robbing from mob bosses, and I mean, at the end of the day, the terrorizing Gotham City is not great, but he wasn't actually gonna blow up the boats, Chad. It is what it is. He was just and really, at the end of the day, he's just testing Batman. Like, I guess killing Rachel was not ultimately that great as well, too. So people, innocent people do die in the Batman's process. That's part of the problem, of course. But, again, it's the Joker. It's Heath Ledger. It's just a cool performance. Like, this is actually a bad villain guy. It's like, oh, yeah, like we're saying. Not fun times to be around. Sir Michael Caine making an appearance as well. But it would be fun if he was able to reconvene this cast or, version of this cast as well too for a future movie. Because again, with what we saw Nolan doing in the 2000s and in the 2010s was working with people consistently over and over again. And even still, again, like we're saying, with Cillian Murphy, who he worked with all the way back in Batman Begins and through the Batman franchise, and now was using him as the lead in Oppenheimer. So it also works out that, you cast Cillian Murphy as the Scarecrow in 2005, and he just so happens to be a guy that, in 20 years is like perfect fit for the Oppenheimer role. But also, again, there is a consistency with the guys he works with in the supporting cast. Like Ken Watanabe is in a couple of spots. We've got, Joseph Gordon-Levitt showing up, of course, in a bunch of Nolan movies. Again, Michael Caine in a bunch of Nolan movies. Miranda Cordillera. We got that person that dies bad in The Dark Knight Rises is in a couple of movies. So yeah, here we go. Aaron Taylor Johnson. We've got the choppers. They're on the mission. They are planning out the temporal movement here as we speak. So I think, of course, the major one that we were saying would be fun, or that I think you would guess that we'd be saying would be fun for him to work with again, would be John David Washington. Like, I feel like if we don't get another John David Washington Christopher Nolan movie, then that is a miss, because again, I think it's a miss that we kind of haven't gotten a Denzel Christopher Nolan movie. Like, Denzel's also, an actor. Like we're saying, there's consistency to some degree to all these people. Like, every actor is going to have the people that they work with in their movies. And, again, with the when Denzel was coming up, like, him and Spike were working together. Is Mo Better Blues 80s or 90s? Hey, yo, let me double check the year on that real quick. Okay, 1990 exactly. So you've got them, again, working like multiple decades way back. They've already have an established relationship by the time Nolan even gets to the scene. So Denzel already has his guys in the 2000s. Him and Tony Scott have done multiple movies together at that point. I'm trying to even think who would become, again, Nolan's first movie, Memento, 2000, I guess after the following. But that first real movie, 2000. I don't know if Denzel is like developing new relationships with directors, because I guess it would be guys that he's consistently working with recently, but I think he's more just kind of, and now he's working with Spike again, in Highest to Lowest, kind of, picking certain projects more so than working with certain people. But him working with Pattinson again would be fun. And I don't know if him necessarily recasting the whole movie, but he kind of does do that with Inception, in that just right in the middle of that Dark Knight Batman trilogy, and then kind of just using those people especially the Dark Knight Rises as well too. And maybe to some degree that is why maybe that movie doesn't hit in the same type of way, because at that time you're like, oh, is this just are we remaking, the Inception cast is remaking a Batman movie? Like, what is this, high school theater? Ayo, chat. Like, can we just get the senior class is now the junior class, and they've graduated, or I guess, wait a second. What happened? What happened in this high school? Ayo, everybody just got held back. So, more plays for the team. I guess really good at plays, but not good at the books. But, just this high school we're talking about. But, if especially Aaron Taylor Johnson, and maybe that would be the guy, like we were saying, Murphy goes supporting role to main role. That would be the guy. Aaron Taylor Johnson, main role in a Nolan movie. And let's see here. Is he actually in Tenet, or in the Odyssey? Because I know the Odyssey, the pre-coverage of the Odyssey is about as high level as you're going to get. And I feel like it's about as stacked of a cast as you're going to get. But I don't know if he... So Pattinson is the return guy from Tenet to the Odyssey. We don't have a role here listed. We've got Hathaway back as well too. Elliot Page, chat, returning to work again with Christopher Nolan. We've got Mia Goth in the Nolan universe. That'll be fun. Hey, yo, chat. Of course, Lupita Nyong'o as well too. First time Tom Holland, Matt Damon, Zendaya, all in the mix for the first time. So this one is a little lighter on the return characters. Again, you got Hathaway, Pattinson, and Page as your main ones. Charlize, though, I mean, again, you're stacking it with the new ones. Charlize, Bernthal. Like, Bernthal's going to be a new Nolan regular. Like, lock that in. Hey, yo, chat. Mia Goth, though. So, again, maybe it's the pieces of the couple of movies. Like, we haven't even seen the movie. Obviously, the Odyssey is still in progress. But if it's John David Washington and Aaron Taylor Johnson from Tenet with Mia Goth and Lupita, I guess the guys from Tenet and the girls from Odyssey, ayo, but Aaron Taylor and John David with Lupita Nyong'o and Mia Goth, and that's kind of your 4-person cast to start with for the next movie. Ayo, we're already planning out the next Nolan movie. But I like we're saying, it's good to balance for sure and work with new characters. But I like the consistency as well too, especially if you're able to create new scripts in a variety of enough of a way. And again, to just give John David Washington a chance to limelight and be a main type of guy, because we are seeing it right now with Coogler and MBJ. And I think not only is it fun, again, just to have consistency, but it's also practical as well too, because it allows the directors work with the people, because the people are good at working with the directors. I mean, Fincher's another obvious example of very stylistically, not just in how the movies are presented on screen, but in the process of making the movie. Like, you have to be of a certain ilk of an actor to not only work with Fincher, but to want to work with Fincher and to continue to work with Fincher over and over again, because working on one movie with Fincher is like working on 6 movies. Is the amount of takes that you have to have. But it also becomes practical. It's like coaches and quarterbacks and receivers and chemistry and all this different stuff, and point guards and centers and pick and roll stuff. The more time you have spent together, the more chemistry you're going to develop. And Nolan has been one of the great guys. Spike Lee has been one of the guys. John Singleton was a guy that had the go-to people in his cast. Eddie Murphy was a guy that had go-to people that he would pull into movies to work with. I mean, he had a friend that he would work with all the time, but also just had other people that he would have in supporting cast roles as well too, constantly present. And that type of thing is, again, something that I hope John David actually leans into as well, because he has been a little bit more random with the directors that he has worked with as well. But some guys it works out. I think Bale has kind of bounced around. He'll kind of take any project. Damon is a little consistent, but he's worked with, he works with like Ridley Scott, Scorsese, Nolan. So at this point, he kind of only, well, not only, but he's definitely tends to work with the main guys as well too. But I feel like again now that maybe in a little less complicated or a pre-laid out script in a different role for John David, again, not to say that he needs like a better role in a Nolan movie, but just to see, again, that type of variety as well too. Like imagine if Nolan and John David, that was the Tony Scott for, the action movie that he could be in every couple of years. If that was the Tony Scott that Denzel had, was Nolan. I mean, we love Tony Scott as much as anybody. I think maybe Nolan's movies, again, get a little more consistent critical acclaim than some of the Tony Scott movies did at the time. But, obviously the replay value of Tony Scott movies are right up there as well. Like, Crimson Tide might be a fine wine movie, chat. Like, just how good Gene Hackman and Denzel are in that movie. Like, you just love just sort of the in shockness that you are after some of those dialogue scenes of them just arguing back and forth and just like, whoa, those guys were, those guys were they actually arguing? Am I gonna get like kicked off the sub? Like, what's gonna happen here? Like, this is just, really intense. But now actually, again, just even being above ground, now we're sort of in the desert, the tactical setting as well too. This is the choppers. Like, we do get good airplane scenes in the Dark Knight trilogy, but again, he hasn't really, the use of the choppers in the modern era hasn't been something that no one has used. So the Odyssey is definitely going to be new for that as well too, because again, is it medieval? The Roman Empire? I don't even know what the actual technical, the Dark Ages? Like, it might be just considered, but I feel like medieval was after did it go Roman Empire and then after the collapse of Roman Empire, kind of into the medieval days after that, or is that just all considered the medieval days? I don't know. Just like if you had a sword, is it medieval times? So that type of time, of course, will be a new set piece for him as well too, because he has best around, like we're saying, with like sci-fi-ish type stuff, but hasn't really gone farther back into history than the World War II, I guess, at this point with Dunkirk, which is still also in itself a variety as well, but still. That's again in history the turn of modern, just I guess, warfare in general. So that is going to lend itself to a little bit more, again, modern sets than just the Odyssey with swords and like cannons from boats and stuff like that. So it'll be fun to see, and that was fun with Oppenheimer as well too. It is exposition and dialogue and things like that, but you still have, of course, a good set piece with the explosion, and there's good tension throughout the movie as well too. Hey yo, what kind of tension? But you are able to get some fun, elevated, like heart pounding, the adrenaline satisfying type moments, I guess, as well. So maybe that's why, again, Tenet, just all adrenaline. The double explosion, you blow the building up from the top and then, blow it up from the bottom again. Nolan is just every crazy. This movie is Nolan GPT right here. This Chris Nolan GPT. It's just all of the Nolan ideas splurged and merged into one. Every sort of concept. Maybe again, Oppenheimer, I don't know how it was supposed to be the magnum opus for the career before that, because it does pivot into this different way. Like, he proves he can do he can do like a movie of exposition. Not that he had to prove that. Like, I guess Memento is a little bit of that as well too, but that's like kind of the twist and turns and keeping you guessing and what's going on and who is this guy and the unveiling of the characters and his ability to mess with plot in time. And I think Oppenheimer is his, again, ability to tell a story, but Tenet is all of the plot time stuff with the action stuff, trying to mash that into one. So it's not, again, it's not Megalopolis. It's not like a major director tried too much and failed, but it just is still a little like, okay, what was going on with the story? And I feel like there are movies as well that, obviously you would walk away from and go, okay, what kind of was going on there? I still don't really know. Like Total Recall is one where, you walk away and you kind of don't know what happened in that movie. Again, it's not that you don't know what happened, but you don't really know if it was a dream or if it was real or if it was all, what was really actually going on over the course of that movie. But that's also kind of the point as well too. So just because you're confused, it doesn't mean that the story itself, I guess, is confusing. So this one, maybe because again the story is a little confusing, it does have that as a potential thing going, against it in that type of way. But other than that, this really is, and probably should have been like a magnum opus action movie for him as well too. But I guess it does. And what was the open? Do we need to go back and double check the opening scene for Oppenheimer or Dunkirk as well? Because I feel like Inception does start on a pretty high level. I guess I don't remember exactly the openings of all the movies. Obviously, I guess The Dark Knight is the one. But even Memento, while it's not a movie of major set pieces, that one starts with that kind of twisty, he's got the guy that you think is his friend at gunpoint. You start a little bit at the end of that movie and you're like, okay, how do we work to this point where he's taking out this guy? And what does that guy mean with what he's saying? So there is a shock value sort of high level entertainment and just again sort of the magnitude of the individual scenes in the movie. That one is a higher level scene, and he is playing that out earlier on, like he is managed to do over the course of his career. So I think because of, again, his filmmaking consistency, obviously he's gonna already go down as one of the greats of all time, and if he continues to stack good movies on it, can continue to definitely make a case for the greatest director of all time. But I think that he does definitely have a thing there with the opening scenes. And I don't know if we have to kind of go through and try to find like everybody's thing, but maybe people don't have definite like a thing in that type of way. Like, would Michael Mann have a thing like that? Or, would Singleton have an individual thing like that in the movie, a trope? Like, his opening scene is the best of it. Again, we had to kind of think about it all and put all the pieces together, but that would definitely be an easy standout one for him there. So this is about as well crafted a confusing movie as you're gonna get. But again, Nolan is definitely, at least maybe this movie proves that the baseline of a bad, just the baseline of a Nolan movie is like a B plus at the worst. Like, you can't even necessarily say that this is a bad movie. It's not a bad movie. It's just a confusing movie. That would be really the only part to take away from it as well. But even like the part where, I guess, spoiler, Pattinson has to step in and save and has to sacrifice himself for John David at the upcoming parts here. Like, even the kind of sequence of events leading into how all that works out is still a little bit confusing on the sequence of events there, and then how he still manages to go back into the loop and stay alive and all that different stuff. But, you get of course, like we're saying, Debelecki character stepping up in the big clutch moment. She has a clutch scene, not only just from an acting standpoint, but plot-wise, she's got to step up and, literally is the one responsible for taking out the villain, tasked with that role. So maybe in some ways she is the only other person you could argue is actually the protagonist of this movie. Like, again, John Day Washington's on the poster. He is the build guy. But her story is, in some ways a more actual major story. Like, hers is the actual story. Like, John David his story is, to kind of help kind of set her free, I guess, and then help figure out what's going on so he can kind of take control of this loop situation. Almost feels like, there really could be a Tenet 2 in a major type of way. And I don't know if he wants there to be a Tenet 2, but maybe that's why this movie is so confusing, because it does feel like a first movie. And the other movies that he made, there is the sequel value of the movie would be them just doing a different version of that movie, where I think Tenet even though it would still obviously be focused on probably some of the temporal stuff, I think you could make a different version of the temporal moving movie that wouldn't just feel like a lesser version of number two. But Inception, like the cool thing about it is we've never seen this dream heist before, so this is your movie for the dream heist. Versus a number two movie is just like, okay, another dream heist. Is it less cool? I mean, it's cool, maybe cooler set pieces, but not as cool shock value, obviously originality, all the different stuff. I mean, obviously the stuff you get, the problem you get with franchising and with sequels. But Interstellar, the same way, and the way the time passes in Interstellar, I think that's definitely really a one-off story. But this does have the vibes of like, I have to lay out an entire world in a couple of movies, and then maybe a second movie would be a little bit more sensible with, okay, you know the beats of how this world works, and then you can John David Washington's character is actually having development through the course of that story instead of him actually just trying to figure out what's going on. So there's the sacrifice play scene from the Pattinson character there. John David, of course, still alive and still able to step up and save the day. But, I mean, chat, like we were, again, just an absolute, at least an absolute 8 out of 10 from Nolan on Tenet. It is what it is. For me, this is 10 out of 10 on the rewatchability standpoint. And I don't know, as time goes on, how I separate rewatchability from quality. Again, it would be the only other next tier of quality would be I don't want to risk wearing out the replay value. But a movie like this, I don't know if I can say it's one of the best movies of the 2020s, because I don't know if, again, there does have to be some overall consensus there in a way. But this is as much as rewatchable to me, as much as I want to go back and rewatch any movies of the 2020s, this might be number one. And I don't know if the list is, a list we want to start unveiling now, but I know like a movie like Sinners, we've talked about how much we've already gone back and rewatched that on HBO over and over again, but that is actually a movie that you could see, of course, making its way up those lists and might actually also have some award claim. A movie like Oppenheimer, again, more well-reviewed, more critically acclaimed than a movie like Tenet. But for us, maybe Tenet's the better movie of the 2020s. I don't know. It's the movie that we'll definitely watch more in the 2020s and going forward. But can you say, based on that alone, that it's the better movie? I don't know. So, and I mean, even the fact that the Catherine character has to pivot off the plan. So the plan, I guess, was to, kill Sador while he's not looking. You got to surprise him, kind of lure him into comfortability, and then take him out while he's not looking. But to her credit, she steps up. She's like, I can't let you know that you've won. And she still actually is able to, spoiler alert, get the job done at this point. So, you've got the gun held on him. It's definitely an advantage. And I don't think Sador is one to necessarily make a move. Like, we've seen him a couple of times. I think there was one time earlier where he did slap it away. So there she does pull the trigger, chat. Does get him down. But, again, he's not necessarily like an athletic sort of, you have to worry about him charging in and disarming. Oh, chat. And then even, the throwing him off the boat. I mean, again, he's a bad guy, but then he thuds off the railing. Overboard, ready to go. So I don't even remember what's even happening, chat. I guess they're preventing World War III. There's some kind of nuke. I guess they're gonna have to disarm. This is really, again, there's sort of Girl with the Dragon tattoo / with Mission Impossible Fallout crossed with The Dark Knight. Like, I don't know if those are the three movies that we would say Nolan would be inspired. If we go to ChatGPT and say, give us a movie based on these three movies, will that be? I guess we'd have to throw in like one more sort of time element movie as well too. Back to the Future mixed with Girl with the Dragon tattoo mixed with The Dark Knight mixed with I don't even remember what Mission Impossible Fallout, and then we get the plot of Tenet from ChatGPT. Is like, let me think. Okay, Tenet is definitely this movie, but this is seems like some of the stuff that Nolan was definitely inspired by when when he was making it. I don't know, but yep, we get the safety chat. John David Washington and Aaron Taylor back to safety. We get Debelecki going overboard, back to safety, I guess, for her as well too. And then she looks off to see the other version of her character showing up. So I guess even still, it doesn't make sense for like what version of Sador did she kill in the timeline. Of course, now we know that the character that she sees falling off the boat earlier is actually herself. So, when she goes back up, is the Sador dead? Like, I, literally have no idea as well. But who's the guy on the boat waiting for her, Chad? I feel like he's kind of a, an action hero, always has the supplies, kind of MVP. Is it this guy here, Chad? Let's see if we can get a name. Oh, that is the other arms dealer that he deals with. I'm not necessarily... Oh, is it... No, not Yuri. Oh, Hamish Patel, chat? Shout out Hamish Patel as the fixer hired by Neil Mahir as listed there. But yeah, he, I feel like, has a... Here, I guess we could actually look here and see a good sort of... I guess, shout out the Rewatchables, that guy sort of career. I guess it starts in Tenet. I guess it's really ramped up these last couple of years. Ayo, he's just been working a lot. He got Yesterday in 2019, Tenet, then Don't Look Up as well too, Enola Holmes too. I don't know, Greedy People, shout out with him and I guess is that Joseph Gordon-Levitt as well too. The Assessment, Bubble and Squeak, and then he's in The Odyssey. So Tenet and Don't Look Up, yeah, back to back. It's like, okay, a couple of movies that we're watching there around the COVID time, he is popping up. Then Yesterday, then The Odyssey, and Enola Holmes I think are pretty popular as well too. TV, Black Mirror, he's in a Black Mirror episode, been putting in work in the episodes just in general across the TV landscape as well. So he's a mainstay. Maybe he's definitely in the next movie as well too. Whatever the next Nolan movie is, like who is he gonna continue to work with? Hamish Patel, John David Washington, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Hamish Patel, Mia Goth, and then Zendaya as the cast of the next movie. We got you, Nolan. We got you. So shout out Aaron Taylor Johnson. He's going his way, chat. Robert Pattinson, he goes this way. This is, again, and maybe the lack of sort of those, those big sort of dialogue, again, I want to say well-written scenes, but those big sort of word-heavy scenes do make for a good moment between the characters like this really stand out more, because this really, again, is sort of the one time that they do sort of express the inner character emotion in that type of way as well too. And it's brief. It's, again, it's only at the end of the movie, but it allows it to sort of stand out and really makes the character reveal from Pattinson at the end as well too really stand out. So shout out, chat. Any excuse to go back and revisit, obviously a Nolan movie, but a Nolan movie starring our guy John David Washington as well too is always going to be a classic movie that we love to go back and revisit. So we had to, get one more movie anniversary out of the way before we hit the NFL season. And make no mistake, chat, we still got movie album anniversaries to hit. There is one album anniversary that we were almost going to do tonight instead of the Tenet rewatch, but I had to be biased, chat. It is what it is. Tenet's one of those movies. I don't know if I can call it a top 10 movie of all time for me yet, but I feel like, because I get into the thing again with directors and actors and stuff where it's like, okay, well, I just, again, I love Nolan, so at the end of the day, I could make a case for a bunch of Nolan movies if I had to have them in like a collection of 10 movies. It's like, okay, a Nolan movie will be better than a lot of other movies. A Spike Lee movie will be better than a lot of the other movies. If we want to get biased, like the Russo brothers, I just would like them, the Russo brothers, maybe in the top 10 or the actor standpoint, like we're saying, Denzel, Eddie Murphy, Wesley Snipes, like whatever. But I feel like if I was actually making a list, I can't like just double up too much on one actor. So like, even though maybe my top 10 list of movies all time might just be like my 10 favorite Denzel movies, like if I'm actually being honest. But, it's like, okay, if I had to just have 10 movies, I guess I'm taking, Training Day, Deja Vu, Man on Fire. I don't know if we're taking, The Mighty Quinn in there. Like, how far do we want to go into the discography for Denzel? But, Inside Man, like, it keeps, it could just keep going. You could literally just get to 10. But I feel like you got to have some variety and mix it up. So I guess point being, I feel like I can only have like one Christopher Nolan movie in my top 10, for our own, I guess, personal list. So right now, it would be The Dark Knight. But Tenet is making a case. And again, personal versus legacy, I don't know if I want to get biased or not. But it's making a push, and we watched it one more time tonight, chat. It is what it is. John David, really, again, a couple more acting scenes at the end gets to show the charm and the sort of stoic look as well, too, as he gets to take control of the temporal stuff as well. And just go ahead and clears out the card, chat. It is what it is. But, everybody's safe and sound at the end of the movie, which is what counts. And again, I feel like going back and rewatching the whole thing, I do maybe have not thought about before about how much this is. It feels like it could kind of be set up for a sequel as well. I don't know if the temporal stuff does feel a little one-time storyline as well, but I feel like you could really get him now taking over in a major way. So do we just ask ChatGPT before we go, chat, what Tenet 2 is? No, we won't do that. We'll let the writers in the writers' room cook that one up. But hey, chat, we made it through Tenet. We made it back in town. We're back in the home studio just in time for, like we said, the NFL season, which we will be here live for during the first game. Normally we go live, the Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, but we've got that Thursday night NFL opener this week, so we're going to be live Thursday, chat. We've got the Friday game as well, too. I forgot that the NFL had a Friday game. I was like, okay, I'll just let you guys know right now, I guess it's Washington week, on the Remington Pod, because we're going to be watching Denzel's new movie, Highest to Lowest, on Friday when it drops on Apple Plus. It is what it is. We've just got to check it out, chat. It's right at the top of the watch list. But we've also going to have, I guess, on the other TV, the Sao Paulo game. We got Sam's Chiefs versus the versus the Chargers, I think, in Sao Paulo. So that should at least, be a fun, anticipating game, and hopefully a competitive matchup. Hopefully, if the Chiefs aren't good this year, that's a fun game and those teams are competitive. But maybe the Chargers are decent and they'll play them well, too. Who knows? But yeah, we'll be here Thursday, Friday. Do we go live Saturday? Michigan's playing Oklahoma on Saturday? I don't know. That's like a big game. And then Sunday, we got week 1 of the NFL season. We'll be live for that. So just stay tuned, chat. Subscribe. We'll be live a lot. You're going to want to follow along. The live streams will go up later as well, too, on the podcast feed. So you can follow along there. Spotify, Apple, all the different stuff. Shout out to Sam's dad, who was, of course, a big fan of the podcast, old school podcast, version of the show. I know, again, like I said, we live on YouTube is the, I don't, obviously, I'm not choosing a platform, chat. We're not being biased, but it's just that's the thing these days. But still, of course, people checking out the pod on the platforms is still happening, chat. And, Spotify's got the video and stuff. It turns out that they're keeping up from a technology standpoint, so it's a viable option. But it is available over there as well. And you can DM us on Instagram at RemingtonM if you want to send us some messages. Send Sam and Naya some congratulations. Chat, send him some money for that little wedding gift. I don't know, chat, but I guess just Instagram have a Venmo option. You'll just have to see. We'll drop a link for the Rem and Sam Venmo in the description. I don't know. You'll just have to stay tuned to that. Or stay tuned. So Thursday, the live feed, live donation to the Rem and Sam, or it's the Sam and Naya. Fun. I don't know what's happening. It's getting late, chat. Our flight got in late. Now we're just getting pod and couples names mixed up. Oh no, chat. It is what it is. That means it's time to go to bed. Okay, we got a slide, chat. It is what it is. I guess good night. We'll see you all next live stream when the NFL season starts, and we will be live and ready to go, chat. So